After wiping his fingers clean, he grabbed the ninth princess' chin and looked at her carefully. The ninth princess pursed her lips and looked very sad. "What's wrong? Who bullied you?" Wuxia raised his horsewhip. "No one bullied me. It's a bit hard to say." The ninth princess looked around and sat down on a stone stool by the pond. She held her chin with both hands and sighed with a face full of worry. "It's easy to say to me. Tell me what you're unhappy about to make me happy." Wuxia played with the horsewhip as he bit her ear and coaxed her in a low voice. The ninth princess looked like she was struggling. Her small mouth opened and closed, and she was about to tell the truth. However, she saw Yumyaochi leisurely walk over with a plate of fragrant pastries. She had her signature gentle smile on her face. The ninth princess' nose twitched and she looked straight at the plate in her hands. It was rumored that the ninth princess was a foodie. It was easy to please her by giving her a plate of unique pastries. Yumyaochi recalled the information she heard and saw that she had attracted the ninth princess's attention. The smile on her face became as gentle as water. The ninth princess was the crown prince's younger sister. It was rumored that the crown prince loved her like a treasure. If she was on good terms with the ninth princess, why would she worry about not being noticed by the crown prince? Thinking of this, Yumyaochi quickly walked over and gently placed the pastries on the stone table. She bowed and said, "This subject greets the ninth princess." This subject personally made a few pastries. "The ninth princess, please have a taste." "Who is she?" The ninth princess pulled on her best friend's sleeve. "Didn't I tell you in a letter earlier that I have a twin sister? Here, this is her." Wuxia disdainfully curled her lips. The ninth princess revealed a look of understanding. She then carefully sized up Yumyaochi and said in astonishment, "This can't be. There must be a mistake. You and big brother you are both so beautiful, so why is she the only one who is so dull? Look at her eyebrows, they look like they don't exist. And those lips, they're so dry that they're cracked. Her skin is coarse and yellow, and she's as thin as ribs. A gust of wind could blow her away. Her appearance and bearing are completely different from you and big brother you. There must be a mistake." The ninth princess was obsessed with appearances. She was hopelessly obsessed with appearances. She would like anyone who was beautiful. Although Yumyaochi's appearance could be said to be elegant and refined, compared to Wuxia's unparalleled beauty, she instantly became like a tasteless soup. Moreover, she had been having nightmares every night recently. Her body had become extremely thin and her complexion was very unsightly. Her previous beauty was now reduced to just 1 or 2 points. She looked like a bean sprout with a big head and toes, very dispirited. Wuxia had always been proud of her appearance. When she heard these words, she wrapped her arms around the ninth princess's neck and laughed wildly. "Good ball, you're really my good little ball. You're absolutely right. I also feel that there must be a mistake somewhere. Otherwise, how could I become sisters with her?" When she said the last word, her brilliant smile was replaced by deep disdain. Yumyaochi dug her palms until they bled. Only then did she manage to suppress the overflowing hatred in her heart. She pretended that she didn't hear her provocation. As the crown prince's most beloved younger sister, Yumyaochi naturally knew everything about the ninth princess. She knew that her brain was a bit slow, so her words were very direct. Just now, her words weren't deliberately targeted at her. She was just expressing her thoughts. She was clearly the true blood of the Marquis household, but there were always countless people who questioned her identity. That kind of sullen feeling that made one's heart feel like it was about to explode was not something a normal person could endure. If it weren't for the fact that Yumyaochi and the Lin clan looked extremely similar, who knew what the outside world would say? It was said that there were all kinds of strange things in the world. The appearance of the real and fake siblings could be considered strange. The siblings who were related by blood didn't look alike at all, but the siblings who weren't related by blood looked very similar. When the three of them stood together, Yumiauchi became the one who was picked up outside. The ninth princess didn't understand Yumiauchi's sullenness. When she saw that Yuxiang was happy, she also became happy. She hugged her best friend with one hand and naturally reached out to grab some pastries with the other. When Yumiauchi saw this, she hurriedly moved the dishes towards her, causing her to smile sweetly. The happy expression on Yuxiang's face immediately disappeared. With a flick of her sleeve, she swept the dishes off the stone table and said in a low voice, "You can't eat." A series of clattering sounds frightened the ninth princess. She stammered, "Why? It smells really good." Yuxiang pried open her fingers and took away the last piece of pastry to throw away. She cast a sidelong glance at Yumiauchi and slowly said, "Some things look good and smell good, but are actually poisonous. Just like some people who look gentle and docile, but can actually push their sisters into a bottomless abyss and smash them to pieces with just a turn of the head. One may know a person for a long time without understanding their true nature. You mustn't eat the food that outsiders bring over." The ninth princess looked at Yumiauchi, who was on the verge of collapse, with a horrified gaze. Her two senior palace maids were both the most astute people in the palace. They immediately connected the dots between Yusiyu and Yumiauchi's ruined reputation a few days ago. Their impression of Yumiauchi instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. Although Miss Yu was unreasonable, she never spoke nonsense. Everything that came out of her mouth was 100% true. The ninth princess's personality was so pure. If she were to befriend someone like Yumiauchi, who knew when she would be schemed against until not even her bones would be left. Thinking of this, the two stepped forward and separated Yumiauchi from their master. Yumiauchi pretended to retreat in fear. Tears quickly gathered in her eyes, making her already thin and haggard face appear even more delicate and pitiful. Just at this moment, Lu, who had been released for a walk, fluttered down from the sky. She picked up the pastry crumbs on the ground and began munching on them. Lu, you can't eat poisonous things. Hurry and spit it out." Yuxiang threw a melon seed over, which happened to hit Lu's head. Lu didn't understand human language, but she rolled her eyes and spat out the pastry crumbs. She picked up the melon seed that her master had thrown at her and flapped her wings to fly away. The ninth princess giggled when she saw this. Yumiauchi's heart was filled with resentment, but she didn't show it on her face. She explained with tears in her eyes, "Younger sister, why are you making things difficult for me? I already said that I wouldn't compete with you for big brother and old ancestors' favor, so you don't have to be too guarded against me. However, mother is seriously ill and has handed over the power of managing the household to me, so I have to do my duty. The ninth princess is an honored guest of the Marquis household. As the host, serving a plate of pastries is only the most basic etiquette. Younger sister, please don't think too much about it. These pastries are poisonous. Younger sister, you'll know once you find someone to test them. There's no need to distort the truth and slander me." Before she even finished speaking, her tears were already flowing. How could Yuxiang fall for her trick? He immediately sneered, "Find someone to test them. Why go through all that trouble? Older sister can just pick one up and eat it for me to see. If it's poisonous, then you only have yourself to blame. If it's not, then I'll immediately apologize to you." The ninth princess clapped her hands and praised with a smile, "Good idea. Lotus seed cake has always been smart." Yuxiang glanced at her with satisfaction. "You want me to eat pastries on the ground? What do these two take me for? A pig or a dog? There should be a limit to insulting others." Yumiauchi really didn't have any intention of currying favor with the ninth princess right now. She only wanted to pounce on them and strangle them to death. Just as her eyes were filled with resentment, she saw the two palace maids step forward and glare at her like tigers eyeing their prey. She was frightened and immediately put away her hatred. She covered her face and cried. Yuxiang actually laughed and sneered, I knew you would cry. Every time I expose your rotten deeds, you cry. Can't you change to a new tactic? I have a violent temper. Do you believe that my head hurts from crying? Be careful that I don't slap your face until it blossoms. Do you think I like to oppose you? If it weren't for you framing me time and time again, pouring basin after basin of dirty water on my head, I wouldn't be so guarded against you. You're just like a poisonous snake. Once you get close, you bite. Being bitten by you is my negligence. If I let you bite me a second time, I'd be stupid. She raised her horsewhip and slammed it on the stone table. The leather made a dull sound when it hit the hard object. Yu Miaoqi trembled. She didn't even bother to apologize and covered her face to escape. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, Yuxiang would expose all of her scandalous deeds. After provoking Yuxiang, 9 out of 10 noble maidens would cover their faces and escape like this. There was even one who fainted from anger. The 9th princess had clearly seen this kind of scene many times, but she still didn't get tired of it. She clapped her hands and was overjoyed. Yuxiang rubbed her head and warned her earnestly, do you see that? It's best to stay away from women who cry at the slightest thing. They can always stir up trouble for no reason. It's fine if they rely on you, but it won't be good if they rely on His Highness the Crown Prince through you. Chapter 75. After chasing away Yu Miaoqi, Yuxiang said with a smile, Speak, why did you call me here? Today is my nephew and niece's 1-month celebration. Sister-in-law asked me to invite you to the celebration. I already received the invitation. Why did you have to come personally? Your face is so sharp, you must be hiding something, right? As they spoke, Tao Hong offered a plate of pastries and then left with the 2 palace maids. The 9th princess had been preoccupied with many things recently and refused to talk about it. Seeing that the soft flesh on her cheeks was about to give way, the emperor-empress was burning with anxiety. After discussing, they decided to let her out of the palace to relax. As expected, she came to confide in Yuxiang at the first opportunity. The 9th princess looked around. Seeing that there was no one nearby, she moved closer to Yuxiang. She pulled open her collar and said softly, I've been in a lot of pain here recently. It's swollen and uncomfortable. I don't even dare to move when I sleep. Can you help me take a look and see if there are any ulcers? I've been applying safflower oil every day, but it's not working at all. It's getting worse. The 9th princess didn't know what was going on, but she knew that this place was very embarrassing. She didn't even allow palace maids to wait on her when she bathed every day. She hurriedly washed up and wrapped herself in her undergarments before burrowing into bed. Then, she would hide under the blankets and secretly rub. As she rubbed, she cried. The scene was very miserable. She finally managed to get a bottle of safflower oil to apply, but it didn't work at all. Instead, it made that place burn with pain and swell even more than before. She became even more afraid to tell outsiders. The moment she left the palace, she hurriedly came to find Yuxiang. Yuxiang looked inside her collar and saw that the 2 small lumps on her chest had already turned red and emitted a strong smell of safflower oil. Yuxiang hurriedly turned her head to fan herself. As she fanned herself, she leaned on the stone table and laughed so hard that she almost rolled off the wheelchair. The 9th princess stared at her in panic. Even her breathing became lighter. My strange illness can be cured, right? No, it can't. Yuxiang laughed so hard that she was panting. The 9th princess was so anxious that tears came out. She said in despair, Then how many days do I have left to live? How should I tell imperial father, imperial mother, imperial brother? Instinctively, she knew that she couldn't tell anyone about her illness in this place. Otherwise, why would she have to use a small duda to cover it up since she was young? Wait, I'll talk to you after I catch my breath. Yuxiang waved her hand and laughed to herself for a while. Then, she pointed to her chest and said, "Take a good look. Do you see the difference between us?" Today, she was wearing a transparent chiffon top with a tube top inside. This was the most popular way of dressing in the Great Han Dynasty. The close-fitting cut outlined the perfect curves of the girl's body. Her soft breasts were round and perky, her waist was slender, and her milk-like snow-white skin was half hidden in the top. If one didn't look carefully, it would be fine. At first glance, the fire in his heart almost came out of his eyes. The ninth princess stared fixedly at Lotus Seed Cake's chest and felt a little thirsty. "Can you give me a cup of honey tea?" Her eyes didn't move at all when she said this. "Silly girl, I'm asking you a question. Answer me first before you drink the tea. Can't you see the difference between us?" Yu Xiang poked her forehead in exasperation, then leaned toward her. She pulled her collar lower with her fingertips, revealing her deep cleavage. The ninth princess licked her lips and murmured, so big." Yu Xiang didn't care about the top that had slipped off her shoulders and the arm that was slightly glowing in the sunlight. She smiled proudly and said, "Do you see it clearly? This isn't an illness, it's puberty, so it can't be cured. Every woman at your age has to go through it at least once. If you don't feel anything, it would be terrible. Feeling pain means that you're growing up in this place. It's normal and you should be happy. I have a few ways to relieve the pain. I'll write them down for you later. When you return to the palace, you should honestly tell Her Majesty the Empress. She will be very happy. Our little ball has finally grown up." The ninth princess was very envious. After holding it in for a while, she finally couldn't hold it in anymore. She reached out to stroke her round and smooth shoulders and stared at her chest as she asked, "Will I also grow up to be as big as you? When you go back, eat more papaya milk, beans, meat, seafood, and animal organs. Don't always rub it. It will grow." Yu Xiang covered her mouth and laughed secretly. The ninth princess couldn't remember and begged, "Can you also write these down for me? Write it down in detail. Write how you eat it. There can't be any differences." After saying this, she also covered her mouth and laughed secretly. Wouldn't she be able to marry when she grew up? Then she would definitely have Father Emperor marry her to the top scholar. Yu Xiang nodded and waved at Tao Hong, Lu Lu, and two palace maids standing in the distance. Tao Hong, Lu Lu went to get the 4 treasures of the study. The two palace maids looked at her anxiously. Yu Xiang couldn't help but laugh again. She pointed at her chest and explained, "Don't worry. Your princess has grown up. There's a bit of swelling pain here. That's right, you must keep a close eye on the safflower oil in the future. It's fine if you apply it to the temple, but wouldn't you suffer if you apply it to that place? It's still early. Go to my courtyard and have the servants prepare water for the princess to wash. She's probably feeling very uncomfortable right now." The two palace maids came to a sudden realization and a bit of laughter appeared in their eyes. So it was like this. No wonder Master was determined not to let anyone serve her. When they returned and told Her Majesty would definitely laugh to death. The ninth princess tightened her collar and her face flushed red. After washing off the burning safflower oil, the skin on her chest felt a bit cool. In the late spring and early summer, it brought a bit of comfort. The ninth princess put on her undergarments and sighed in satisfaction. Yu Xiang ordered Tao Hong to take out the clothes she wore and she was 12 or 13 years old. She picked out a few sets that she hadn't worn and spread them out on the bed for the ninth princess to choose for herself. The ninth princess bit her lip. She picked up one set and looked at it, then flipped and sniffed the other. She busied herself for a long time. If you want to choose clothes, then choose clothes. What are you sniffing? Do you think you're choosing pastries? Yu Xiang put the 2 letters she had written into a pouch and handed it to the 2 palace maids. It smells so good. It's all your scent. The ninth princess giggled and nodded. She brushed the clothes to the side and said with a red face, "Lotus seed cake, are there any other clothes?" As expected, you've grown up. You actually know how to care about your appearance. Back then, you ate until your mouth was full of oil and didn't even wash your face. You directly went to the study to attend class. I wanted to help you wipe it, but you didn't let me. You said you wanted to save the oil for the next meal. Recalling those embarrassing events, Yu Xiang couldn't stop laughing for a while. That was because there were rice grains stuck to my food. Imperial Father saw it and didn't let me wipe it. He said I could save it for the next meal. How old was I at that time? Naturally, I believed him. The ninth princess's cheeks were so red that blood could drip out. If a ladle of water was poured on her, white smoke would definitely come out of her head. These days, she seemed to have suddenly grown up. She always pinched her chubby double chin in front of the bronze mirror and revealed a worried expression. However, no one could understand her worries. Not to mention Yu Xiang, who was rocking back and forth with laughter. Even the two palace maids were shrugging their shoulders and trying hard to hold back their laughter. Yu Xiang finally had enough of laughing. Only then did she order someone to open all her suitcases and let her choose for herself. The ninth princess didn't have time to worry about her blushing face. She picked and picked in the suitcases and finally took out a light purple dress. Yu Xiang took a closer look. The ninth princess refuted very seriously. Yu Xiang was very happy. She hugged her neck and swayed it left and right. Finally, she kissed her face several times. The west wing was full of laughter, but the main room was overcast with dark clouds. After Yu Miaoqi left their line of sight, she put down her hands that were covering her face. There were no tears in her eyes, only resentment. She walked back along the flat path. When she saw the marble slipway on both sides of the steps, she suddenly laughed sarcastically. In this Marquis Yongla, there were no small paths covered with gravel, only smooth and flat paths. Whenever she met a flight of steps, there would be a slipway. The middle section of the threshold of every room would be filled in. All of these tedious remodeling were done so that Yu Xiang's wheelchair could easily reach any place in the Marquis household. She didn't have legs, but she could move unimpeded in the Marquis household. She didn't have any blood relations, but she could win everyone's favor. She wasn't like herself. Her body was clearly healthy, and the same blood flowed in her veins, but she couldn't stand here. Why was this? And why? Yu Miaoqi walked up the step by step along the slipway. Her scratched palms were bleeding. Chapter 76. The Lin clan hadn't slept soundly for half a month. At this moment, she was lying on a soft couch and drinking medicine. When she saw her daughter enter, a trace of fear quickly flashed through her eyes. The Jin family's mangled appearance and her daughter's cold and ruthless face alternated in her mind. She gritted her teeth and whispered, "You're back. Did you see the ninth princess?" "I did." Yu Miaoqi casually picked up a stool and sat down. She took out a handkerchief to wipe the blood from her palms. The Lin clan was shocked and they saw this and hurriedly asked, "How did you get hurt?" "I'll have someone find a doctor for you right now." Yu Miaoqi casually wrapped the blood-stained handkerchief around her hand and shook her head. "This little injury is nothing. I can just apply some medicine for sore wounds. Thinking back to when I was locked up in the dungeon and tortured by Big Brother, my injuries were 100 or 1,000 times worse than this. Physical pain is a common occurrence for me. In any case, my life is worthless, so it doesn't matter." Hearing this, the Lin clan no longer remembered their previous fear and vigilance. They rushed to her side and examined her scarred hands. They were so distressed that they shed tears. If she hadn't suffered so much, how could her daughter have become like this? Even if she had committed a sin, it was the family Shen's sin. Yu Pinyan's sin and Yu Xiang's sin. What did it have to do with Chi? She was the biggest victim. My child, it's been hard on you. Mother has let you down. She patted her daughter's back while sobbing. Yumiauchi was annoyed, but she didn't show it on her face. She comforted her, daughter is willing to suffer any more hardships to be reunited with mother. Don't cry. Quickly wipe your tears. Mother, they dote on you Xiang, so they loathe me. If this continues, I won't be able to stay in the Marquis household. Mother, I want to quickly get married and take you out. The Lin clan was extremely moved. She smiled with tears in her eyes. My child, are you stupid? How could a mother and daughter leave the manor to live alone? No matter how badly Yen treats me, he's still Master Ho, the heir of Prefecture Yu. He has to take care of me when I'm old and when I die. Look at how cold-hearted he is. Why would he take care of you in your old age and send you off when you die? I must marry a husband who is more powerful than him, so that he will be afraid of me. Only then will you have support in the Marquis household. If he doesn't want to acknowledge you, I'll acknowledge you. If he doesn't want to raise you, I'll raise you. I want you to live the rest of your life happily. Mother, what do you think? Yumiauchi hugged the Lin clan's neck and asked expectantly. The Lin clan was captivated by the big picture she had drawn. Her heart was filled with joy, and her heart, which was gradually dying, was filled with lush and verdant vitality. She stopped crying and nodded with a smile. Yumiauchi withdrew from her embrace and bluntly said, Then mother should go dress up and take me to the Crown Prince mansion to attend the banquet. Go to the Crown Prince mansion to attend the banquet? The Lin clan was stunned. That's right. If you want to marry me off, shouldn't mother help me find a good family? Mother, daughter won't hide it from you. Daughter wants to marry the Crown Prince. Yumiauchi's tone was firm and calm, as if she was only talking about a trivial matter and not her marriage. Marry the Crown Prince? The Lin clan still hadn't regained their senses and could only repeat her words. That's right. Only by marrying the Crown Prince will I be able to contend against opinion and protect myself and mother. But the Crown Prince already has an official wife. Don't tell me you want to be his concubine. How can my prefecture Yu's legitimate daughter be someone else's concubine? Moreover, the Crown Princess just gave birth to a pair of boy-girl twins who are favored by His Majesty. What kind of good life will you have if you marry him? The Lin clan had finally digested this shocking news and strongly opposed it. Does mother not know? Yumiauchi smiled unconcernedly. When the Crown Princess gave birth, the cold poison entered her body. Not only will it be difficult for her to have children, even her bones have been greatly damaged. Right now, she's just enduring her days. I won't be anyone's concubine, I'll only be the official wife. When the Crown Princess passes away, based on Yupinyan's relationship with the Crown Prince, based on his overwhelming power, as long as the Crown Prince isn't stupid, as long as you tell the Empress about the marriage alliance, then the position of official wife will definitely be mine. Although she loathed Yupinyan, she had no choice but to use his power. This kind of humiliation deepened the hatred suppressed in her heart. How do you know that the Crown Princess doesn't have many years left to live? Where did you hear this from? The Lin clan refused to believe it. The imperial physicians of the Imperial Academy of Medicine take turns going to the Crown Prince mansion every day for a month. Recently, the Crown Prince's complexion has been dispirited, and he's always in a state of panic. The Crown Princess maternal family has also sent several outstanding beauties to the Crown Prince mansion to attend to the Crown Prince. Connecting all of this together, who can't guess the key point? Mother, don't ask any more. The Crown Princess has already sent an invitation to the Prefecture Yu's womenfolk to attend the little imperial grandson's one-month-old celebration. As the mistress of the household, you should bring a generous gift to visit. Yumiauchi's face gradually showed some impatience. Has the invitation already been sent? Why haven't I received it? The Lin clan was still hesitating. It was sent a long time ago. It's in Yuxiang's hands. Hurry up. Be careful that old ancestor takes her away first and leaves us behind. Yu Miaoqi completely lost her patience. She pushed the Lin clan into a side room to change clothes and carefully dressed herself. Yuxiang helped the ninth princess choose a form-fitting cloud and butterfly dress to wear. Then, she gave her a pink and tender peach blossom makeup. Her hair was tied into a bun with a butterfly hairpin on each side. When she walked, the butterfly wings would slightly flap, as if it would fly away in the next instant. The ninth princess was originally delicate and adorable. Now that she was dressed up, she looked even more like a porcelain doll, indescribably lively and lively. She looked left and right in front of the mirror, then hugged Lotus Seed Cake's neck and laughed foolishly. Don't be so smug. It's almost time. Yuxiang pinched the soft flesh on her cheeks. Only then did the ninth princess reluctantly leave the dressing table. In order to make the butterfly wings flap, she even skipped as she walked, causing the two palace maids to laugh the entire way. When they arrived at the main hall, the matriarch had indeed been waiting for a long time. She smiled as she paid her respects to the ninth princess. Then, she checked the gift list and was about to leave. Just as she stepped out of the door, she saw the Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi respectfully waiting at the front. Old ancestor, daughter-in-law has finished her preparations. Let's go. The Lin clan took a few steps forward and naturally supported the matriarch. Yu Miaoqi smiled at the ninth princess. This subject greets the ninth princess. The princess's attire is even more beautiful than the colorful butterflies in the sky. Who didn't like to hear nice words? The ninth princess blushed and humbly said a few words, but her small mouth was wide open and her face was filled with unconcealable joy. Yuxiang could embarrass Yu Miaoqi in public, but he couldn't do the same to the Lin clan. He could only remain silent. Seeing this, the Lin clan was relieved and supported the matriarch as they walked towards the main entrance. The matriarch was someone who cared about face. The ninth princess and two palace maids were watching from the side. It wasn't good for her to chase them away, so she could only walk forward without saying a word. The crown princess had been bedridden this entire time and didn't know that the servant girl who had been caught burning charcoal was the eldest daughter of the prefecture Yu's wife. After her illness had improved, she had instructed the imperial bodyguards to release the servant girl so as not to implicate the innocent. For the sake of his good friend and the girl's reputation, the crown prince kept this matter a secret. He also understood that Yu Miaoqi wasn't at fault and specially sent many gifts to calm her nerves. The two masters were benevolent, but as a subordinate, he couldn't push his luck. It had only been a month since the incident. If he brought her to the crown prince mansion to make a fool of himself, wouldn't he be bringing bad luck to the crown princess for no reason? Moreover, Yu Miaoqi's fate was still the same. He didn't know if she would jinx anyone else. The matriarch walked slower and slower. Seeing that the main entrance was right in front of her, she finally grabbed the Lin clan's wrist. The Lin clan looked at her nervously, their eyes full of pleading. They were so eager to show their faces at the crown prince mansion. Was it because they saw that the crown princess was seriously ill that they had designs on the crown prince's second wife? She was still alive and well, so there should be a limit to her greed. The matriarch's chest was filled with anger. She wished she could use her walking stick to give the Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi a good beating. The ninth princess and Yuxiang, who had already walked out of the main entrance, turned their heads to look at them. The matriarch smiled and waved her hand at the two. Princess, please take my granddaughter and leave first. I left something behind and have to go back to get it myself. The ninth princess didn't suspect anything. She pulled Yuxiang's sleeve and hopped towards her luxurious carriage. Yu Miaoqi automatically followed, as if she didn't see the matriarch's gaze that was hinting for her to stay. The ninth princess got on the carriage first and opened her arms with a smile. Lotus Seed Cake, come on in. I'll catch you. Be careful of your heart and feet. Be careful of your elbows. Yu Xiang repeatedly agreed. After getting on the carriage, she immediately hugged Xiao Qiu and kissed her fiercely twice. The ninth princess also kissed her twice and giggled. The two of them were happily hugging each other when they saw a palace maid supporting Yu Miaoqi onto the carriage. Because the matriarch said take my granddaughter and leave first, but didn't say which granddaughter it was, the palace maid naturally thought that she was taking both of them. Yu Miaoqi was also a thick-skinned person. She knew that the matriarch wouldn't make things difficult for her in front of the ninth princess, so she took advantage of this loophole and followed closely. At this time, the matriarch was forcefully pinching the Lin clan's wrist. Two balls of anger burned in her eyes as she glared at Yu Miaoqi, who had already boarded the carriage. Yu Miaoqi acted as if she didn't see anything. She lowered the curtain and said with a smile, "It's already the end of spring and the beginning of summer. The sun is a bit hot. It's better to lower the curtain so that the princess's delicate skin won't get sunburned." The two palace maids also felt that the sun was too harsh. They lowered the curtain on the other side of the carriage and then bent their backs as they walked out. They boarded the next carriage with Tao Hong and Lu Lu. Yu Xiang looked through the gap in the curtain and saw the matriarch expressionlessly saying something. The Lin clan seemed to be supporting her, but in reality, they were being restrained. Their faces turned from red to white, then from white to purple. It was very interesting. It was obvious that the matriarch wasn't saying anything good. The carriage slowly moved. Only then did Yu Xiang withdraw her gaze. She took out a plate of pastries from a hidden compartment and placed it on a small table. The ninth princess picked up a piece in each hand. She ate the one in her left hand and fed the one in her right hand to the lotus seed cake. She had a satisfied expression and didn't say anything to Yu Miaoqi. Yu Miaoqi obediently sat in a corner of the carriage and didn't say much. After Yu Xiang finished eating the pastries, she declined Xiao Qiu's offer to feed her again. She raised her chin at Yu Miaoqi and said with a contemptuous smile, "Older sister, what's the next line of, when the water is too clear, there will be no fish?" Yu Miaoqi hesitated for a moment before answering, "The next line is when a person is too perceptive, he will have no friends." This line meant that if a person was too shrewd, they would lose their friends. Yu Miaoqi couldn't help but suspect that Yu Xiang was secretly mocking her. But in the next moment, she understood that Yu Xiang's mouth was far more vicious than any weapon in the world. "Older sister, you're wrong. It's when a person is too shameless, he will be invincible." Yu Xiang covered her mouth and chuckled. She slowly said word by word, in layman's terms, when a person is shameless, he will be invincible. "Older sister, you're already invincible. Congratulations, congratulations." She clasped her hands together and looked indescribably delicate and cute. But in Yu Miaoqi's eyes, she was no less than the most ferocious-looking malicious spirit. The ninth princess, who was eating pastries, suddenly burst out laughing. She patted the small table and praised, "This line is very interesting. When the water is too clear, there will be no fish. When a person is too shameless, he will be invincible. When a person is shameless, he will be invincible. How fitting. Lotus seed cake, you're too talented." Yu Miaoqi rubbed her chest and silently swallowed the blood that had already surged to her throat. Chapter 77. Because the crown princess was unwell, the full moon banquet wasn't held on a large scale. She only sent invitations to the families she was familiar with and a few princes. The rest of the officials were sent away with gifts. When the ninth princess and her entourage arrived, the banquet hadn't started yet. The crown princess was receiving people from her maternal family in the inner chambers. The ninth princess ignored the palace servants' attempts to stop her and led Yu Xiang inside. Yu Miaoqi was left alone outside the hall. The crown princess' voice sounded very weak. It was clear that the rumors about her illness weren't just empty rumors. Her mother couldn't hear what she said clearly. Her mother began to sob quietly and choked out, "Then we'll do as you say. We can't let the two children suffer." The ninth princess skipped in. The two hurriedly wiped their tears and greeted each other with a smile. Yuxiang wasn't as tactless as her mother. She had already ordered Tao Hong, Lu, to push her wheelchair outside and wait quietly. "Imperial sister-in-law, today is a joyous day. Why are you crying?" The ninth princess looked down and stared at her red eyes. The crown princess turned her face to avoid her. She also turned her face away. The two sisters-in-law chased each other around for a while. Gradually, happiness appeared on their faces. The crown princess mother felt much better when she saw this. She got up and left. When she saw Yuxiang, she smiled and went up to chat with her. The crown princess heard Yuxiang's sweet voice and hurriedly called out, "Xiang, is also here. Come in quickly." One of the two girls was her joy and the other was her little lucky star. She loved both of them. After exchanging some simple greetings, the crown princess sent someone to bring in pastries. Seeing that her sister-in-law was busy eating, she looked towards Yuxiang and asked gently, "Xiang, are you familiar with my three younger sisters? What do you think of their personalities? I'm afraid my body won't make it. I'm always thinking of finding a way out for my children." Her illness was getting worse by the day. Not only were her legs so sore that she couldn't move, her lower abdomen was constantly leaking lochia. If she couldn't stop the lochia, she might die of blood loss one day. However, her children were still young and were a thorn in the side of all the princes and descendants. How to let her children grow up safely had become a worry that she couldn't get rid of. Probably because she had received Yuxiang's dragon phoenix divination before she gave birth, she had an inexplicable sense as feelings. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said such private things. That's right, just as the rumors said, she planned to choose one of her three younger sisters to be the crown prince's second consort. She had already informed the emperor and empress. For the sake of the heir-grandson's safety and to keep the Empress Dowager's maternal family in check, the Emperor and Empress Dowager had already acquiesced. Yuxiang didn't go out often, but because she took care of the Fu's affairs and because her brother's eyes and ears were everywhere, she was familiar with all the noble ladies in the capital. However, in front of the crown princess, she couldn't make too many comments about her sisters. If she said it well, it would be flattery, but if she said it poorly, it would be slander. She thought for a moment and said bluntly, "I'm not familiar with them, so I can't say whether they're good or bad. However, I know that people are selfish and can't place their hopes on others. But I'm afraid my body won't make it past half a year." The crown princess smiled bitterly. She rolled up her sleeves and showed her arms that were as thin as withered branches. After giving birth, the grand doctor had clearly said there weren't any major problems. Who would have thought that she would die a month later? The heavens had given her a pair of children but took away half of her lifespan. It was indeed very fair. She didn't have anything to complain about. She just wanted to arrange everything for her children before she died. "Dr. Piao," Yuxiang said with her brows furrowed. The crown princess smiled even more miserably. "When I got smallpox when I was 8 years old, I used up one of my chances to be diagnosed. Even the imperial physicians are at a loss." Yuxiang fell silent. At this moment, the matriarch walked in under the guidance of a palace maid. She was holding a vermilion plant that looked like a coral and a tree. The matriarch bowed to the crown princess and placed the plant at the head of the bed. She said with a smile, "This is exorcism grass. It's a plant that comes from the southern seas. It's said to be able to dispel illness and make people healthy. However, no one in the southern seas has ever managed to grow it. It's just a legend." Xiang'er found a bag of seeds and scattered them all. Only one plant survived. "Not only does it look good, it also smells good. I'm sending it to the crown princess. I hope you can recover soon. The vermilion plant emitted a sweet fragrance that refreshed the heart. The crown princess's throbbing temples immediately calmed down. She thanked the matriarch with a smile. Because she couldn't bear to see the two young ladies get over their illness, she ordered Song Mama to bring them outside to play with the other noble ladies. After the two left, they didn't walk towards the crowded back garden. Instead, they walked along a small path to a quiet pavilion and prepared to have a private chat. Just as they sat down, they heard footsteps slowly approaching. The two turned their heads and met a pair of long and narrow eyes. The ninth princess's cheeks flushed red. She didn't know what to do. The person who came was also very surprised. His eyes revealed excitement, but he quickly restrained it. He bowed and prepared to leave. Don't go. The ninth princess stood up and shouted anxiously. That person was also reluctant. When he heard this, he immediately stopped and a faint smile appeared on his face. Yuxiang frowned slightly. Princess, why do you want him to stay? This is the back garden. He's just an outsider who trespasses into the back garden. If he offends any noble, can he bear the responsibility? After saying this, he looked at the unusually handsome youth and sternly reprimanded, the princess is magnanimous and won't bicker with you. Why don't you hurry up and get lost? Shen Yuanqi pursed his lips and pointed to a courtyard door not far away. Reporting to the princess, you'll enter the front garden after you pass through that corner door. He then pointed to a small building behind the pavilion and bowed. That's the crown prince's study. It's only 500 meters away from here. Therefore, this place is already the boundary of the front garden. This humble subject didn't expect the princess and Miss Yu to be resting here. If there's any conflict, please forgive this humble subject. Yuxiang had only been to the crown prince mansion a few times. How could he remember the layout of the mansion? He looked at the ninth princess with an inquiring gaze. The ninth princess's heart and eyes were filled with the youth's handsome face, his gentle smile, and his deep voice. At this moment, her cheeks were flushed and her mind was in a mess. How could she receive her question? He could only smile foolishly. When the ninth princess was 6 years old, she had run to the throne room to find her imperial father while crying. She was a person who ran amok in the palace. Who would dare to stop her in the crown prince mansion? When the manservant guarding the door saw that the people who came were the ninth princess and Miss Yu, he hurriedly dodged and pretended that he didn't see them. This caused the misunderstanding. Yuxiang understood. Seeing that Yuan Lang was still bowing and waiting for punishment, there was no need to mention how embarrassed he felt. After a moment of silence, he covered his mouth and laughed, Lord Shen, please rise. Just now, we were just playing around with the Lord Shen. Please don't blame us. What a stubborn duck. Shen Yuanqi almost laughed out loud. He lowered his head and restrained himself for a moment before saying that he didn't dare. She was clearly worried that he would be caught by the imperial bodyguards for trespassing into the backyard, but she pretended to be fierce and reprimanded him so that he could escape. Her personality was still so awkward and cute. Thinking of this, his mood became more and more cheerful. His eyes, which had always been dark and gloomy, were now very bright. The ninth princess finally regained her senses. She waved her little chubby hand and shouted, Lord Shen, come here. I'll treat you to chestnuts. These are sugar-fried chestnuts made by the imperial kitchen's chef using a secret method. They're very fragrant. As she spoke, she took out a few round, big, and shiny chestnuts from her pouch. Shen Yuanqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this coaxing tone. If it was in the past, he would have already apologized and left. Now that Yuxiang was also here, he was very reluctant to leave. While he was still struggling in his heart, he had already stepped into the pavilion. By the time he regained his senses, he had already sat down. The ninth princess was unable to contain her joy. She personally peeled a bright yellow chestnut and handed it over. Shen Yuanqi hurriedly thanked her and took it. In terms of shamelessness, Yu Xiang wasn't inferior to Yu Miaoqi. At this time, she had already shaken off her awkwardness and asked with a smile, "His Highness the Crown Prince and the other princes are all in the front hall. Why did you run here instead of currying favor with them?" Shen Yuanqi's heart was slightly moved. He bluntly said, "Miss, you must have already heard that I was originally a servant of the Shui estate and not the heir of a noble family. With my background, it's best that I don't sully the noble's eyes. I'm actually more comfortable hiding here." So the rumors on the streets were true. Yu Xiang nodded in realization. The ninth princess saw that he had hidden here all alone, and for some reason, she felt very sad. The rims of her eyes gradually turned red. Yu Xiang caught a glimpse of her expression from the corner of her eyes. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said, "Even the Lord Shen doesn't think anything of it, so what are you sad about?" The divine ancestors' era's great general Fang was an imperial servant. The awe-inspiring deep-sea envoy was a eunuch. The great ancestors' left prime minister, official Lin, was once a tortoise slave. In one breath, she listed 7 or 8 prominent officials who were of lowly birth. She joked, "When it comes to our great Han dynasty's 10 great inspirational ministers, the Lord Shen isn't even on the list. His background needs to be more tragic." The ninth princess's eyes weren't red anymore and she didn't feel so sad anymore. Shen Yuanqi forcefully pursed his lips to restrain the smile that was constantly rising in his heart. The lasso's method of comforting people was always so unique. Yu Xiang took a chestnut from the ninth princess's hand and threw it into her mouth. She smiled and said, "The people of the world all say that the Lord Shen is of lowly birth and can't be of great use. However, they don't know that being of lowly birth also has its benefits. Today, who can enter the Crown Prince mansion to attend the banquet isn't an important person. For a small official like Shen Zhuangyuan, let alone attend the banquet, I'm afraid he won't even be able to touch the door. Since he has gained the favor of His Highness the Crown Prince and the Emperor, the Lord Shen's official path will be smooth sailing." Shen Yuanqi smiled but didn't say anything. However, he sighed in his heart. Sure enough, she was Shen Yuanqi's younger sister. Her vision was much higher than Yu Miaoqi's. Yu Miaoqi thought that spreading his background would ruin his official career. How could she know that the emperor placed him in such an important position because of his background? Now, the nobles in the capital all avoided him like a snake or scorpion. There was no news of those who originally planned to marry into the Shui family. The emperor intended to isolate him. As a result, wouldn't the emperor be more assured to use him as a lonely official without any background? The crown prince, who had always been of one mind with the emperor, would naturally give him preferential treatment. Right now, he seemed to be down and out, but in fact, his future would be smooth sailing. In the end, he had to thank Yu Miaoqi. The ninth princess was completely relieved after hearing these words. She stuttered as she talked to the Zhuangyuan. Chapter 78. Shen Yuanqi had always been a tactful and shrewd person. Now that his sister, whom he missed day and night, was by his side, he naturally put all his energy into dealing with her. In just a moment, the two girls became familiar with him. Yu Xiang listened to him talk about his past as a slave in the Shui family. She clicked her tongue in wonder and asked, "Do you have 10 taels of silver?" Shen Yuanqi reached for the pouch and softly said, "Of course I do." He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the girl, whom he had only met twice, asking for money from him. Yu Xiang covered her face and said, "Didn't you say that when you became rich, you would throw the money back at me? I didn't expect that it would come true. Throw it back. I, Yu Xiang, am not a villain who goes back on her words. Moreover, the money was originally mine. There's no reason for me not to ask for it back. The most satisfying thing in the world is to be smashed by money. Throw it back." As long as you don't smash my face, I can bear it even if it's 100 taels more. Shen Yuanqi stared blankly for a moment, then immediately burst out laughing. Such a mischievous and carefree little girl was his biological sister. She was 1,000 times cuter than he had imagined. Why did the heavens have to play tricks on people? They made her leave the family Yu and sent that jinx to the family Shen. If it wasn't for this, their family would be living very happily right now. As he laughed, a deep bitterness seeped out of his eyes. Yu Xiang seemed to have sensed something, but the 9th princess propped up her chin and stared at the scholar's extremely handsome smiling face as if she was intoxicated. Just at this moment, a low and deep voice sounded, "Lord Shen, His Highness the Crown Prince is looking for you." Several people turned their heads to look back with different expressions. The 9th princess and Shen Yuanqi were inexplicably reserved, but Yu Xiang was pleasantly surprised and called out, "Brother." Yu Pinyin stepped forward to greet the 9th princess, then stared at his sister and asked, "Xiang'er and the Lord Shen have known each other for a long time?" "Yes, the Lord Shen fell under my wheels and was almost crushed to death. I gave him 10 taels of silver to get over the shock." In order to leave some face for the scholar, Yu Xiang vaguely described the suicide incident. Shen Yuanqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yu Pinyin's wheelchair turned around and pushed her wheelchair in the corner. In order to avoid encountering other men and night, the 9th princess, in order to avoid offending her, of the 9th. The Lord and S out and Mississippi. Yu Xiang nodded obediently and left with the 9th princess, who was reluctant to part with her. Yu Pinyin watched the two of them walk away, then turned back to look at Shen Yuanqi. His eyes were very sharp. "What did you say to Xiang'er?" "I didn't say anything that I shouldn't say. Commander Yu, please rest assured." After a pause, Shen Yuanqi couldn't help but ask, "Commander Yu, you said that you would send my sister home. How long do you have to wait?" Yu Pinyin looked at him deeply and walked forward. "After Xiang'er reaches her marriageable age." Shen Yuanqi followed closely and asked, "Why do you have to wait until after her marriageable age?" He couldn't wait any longer. "She can get married when she reaches her marriageable age. Naturally, you have to wait until after that." Yu Pinyin smiled ambiguously. Shen Yuanqi frowned and thought deeply. Yu Miaoqi was thrown into the side hall by the 9th princess. Because she was the legitimate daughter of Marquis Yongle, the crown princess' 3 sisters were very kind to her. The young girls gathered together to talk about makeup, rouge, and face powder. The atmosphere was very harmonious. The crown princess's maternal family was the Min family of Changshui. They had produced 4 imperial tutors. The crown princess's grandfather had taught the emperor and the crown prince. Although he had retired and the crown princess's father was only a second-rank scholar of the Hanlin Academy, the Min family's status was very high. It was also because of this that the 3 young ladies of the Min family were all magnanimous and noble people. The youngest and most beautiful one even faintly considered herself the master. From the guests to the servants, they were all very well taken care of. Yu Miaoqi looked at her coldly. She had already guessed her thoughts. Was she planning to inherit the crown princess's last wish and become the crown prince's second wife? She was really stupid beyond cure. The crown princess had already given birth to a pair of children. How could she not think for her children? She would definitely trick her younger sister into drinking sterilization medicine before she died. Then, she would make the other party willingly raise a pair of children for her. Disaster had already befallen them, but these people were still complacently dreaming. Yu Miaoqi lowered her head and took a sip of hot tea. She smiled contentedly. Regardless of whether the crown princess had this idea or not, as long as she spread the news, her sisters would be able to make a fuss. Other than the Min family's daughter, who else in the entire Great Han dynasty was more suitable to be the crown prince's first wife? Naturally, it was the younger sister of the crown prince's study companion, Commander Yu. If the crown prince wanted to smoothly ascend the throne and sit on the throne, it was impossible for him not to rope in opinion. Yu Miaoqi was deep in thought when she saw a tall, tanned young girl step into the side hall and look around. The three Min sisters hurriedly greeted her with smiles. "Jiao Jiao has arrived. Quickly sit." Such a sturdy figure with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a heroic spirit. If he wasn't wearing women's clothing, one would almost think that he was a son of some family, but he just had to be called Jiao Jiao. Yu Miaoqi lowered her head and used her handkerchief to cover the mocking smile on her lips. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw that many noble ladies were also unable to restrain their laughter and had mocking gazes. Of the three Min sisters, the eldest was called Min Song, the second was called Min Ji, and the youngest was called Min Lan. Because the crown princess was seriously ill, the three of them were entrusted to take care of the womenfolk. Although the eldest sister and second sister didn't have much interaction with Fan Jiaojiao, they didn't look down on her. On the other hand, Min Lan's smile was very stiff. She was bashful, and her noble aura was completely washed away. She was no longer as graceful as before. Fan Jiaojiao was a straightforward person. When she saw Min Lan, her face immediately darkened. She automatically picked up a stool and sat down, asking, "Where are the ninth princess and Xiang'er? How come I don't see them?" Min Song ordered someone to serve her tea and said warmly, when they saw older sister crown princess, they went to play by themselves. "Right now, I don't know where they're hiding. Don't worry. When the banquet starts, they'll naturally return." There was less than an hour left before the banquet. When she thought about how she had to feign civility with this group of delicate noble ladies, Fan Jiaojiao felt as if ants were crawling all over her body. She was extremely uncomfortable, and her already tanned skin seemed even darker. She looked around and pointed at Yu Miaoqi next to her, asking, "Which family's young lady is this? Why does she look so unfamiliar?" If she was suitable, she would use her to pass the time. "This is Yu Xiang's older twin sister. She's a secular disciple of Reverend Liao Kong. She just returned home after crossing her calamity." Min Ji explained softly. Min Lan sat at the head of the table. She perked her ears to listen to their conversation while dealing with the other noble ladies. She looked just like the master of the household. Fan Jiaojiao stared at Yu Miaoqi with wide eyes. She swept her eyes from top to bottom, her gaze extremely impudent. Yu Miaoqi felt displeased, but at the same time, she felt a bit uneasy. To be able to be on good terms with Yu Xiang, this person definitely wasn't someone easy to get along with. As expected, Fan Jiaojiao immediately opened her mouth in a tiger-like voice. "Is this really Xiang'er's older twin sister? Why does she look so ugly? Could it be that there's been a mistake?" Her voice was loud and clear to begin with. In her shock, she raised her voice by several decibels. Not to mention the noble ladies in the side hall, even the crown princess and the other noble ladies in the main hall heard her clearly. The noble ladies all covered their mouths to stifle their laughter. A few of them were even caught off guard and burst into laughter. Yu Miaoqi wanted nothing more than to dig a hole in the ground and crawl into it. Min Song was slightly taken aback. When he came back to his senses, he hurriedly tried to smooth things over. There are also twins who don't look alike. Official Wang's two youngest sons are one such example. Moreover, second Miss Yu is so elegant and beautiful. If she can be considered ugly, then how can we, the average person, live? Fan Jiaojiao heard her mother coughing next door and knew that she had caused trouble again. She tried to salvage the situation by saying, "She's actually not ugly. It's just that compared to Xiang'er, she looks ugly. I made a mistake just now. If you compare goods, you'll throw them away. If you compare people, you'll die. You might as well not explain at all." The hall burst into laughter one after another. Even Min Song, who had always been reserved and steady, couldn't help but smile. Yu Miaoqi's cheeks had already turned purple, but there was still a forced smile hanging on her lips. Her upper teeth were clenched tightly together, and a faint taste of blood spread in her mouth. She really wanted to yell at the top of her lungs and tell everyone that she was Marquis Yonla's true legitimate daughter. Yu Xiang was just a bastard, a lowly daughter of a merchant family. But as soon as this thought appeared in her mind, she firmly suppressed it. She knew that she couldn't say this. In this lifetime, Yu Xiang had to be her twin sister, Marquis Yonla's legitimate daughter. Denying Yu Xiang was the same as denying herself. Destroying Yu Xiang was the same as destroying herself. Yu Miaoqi was suffering in the abyss of suffering. Just as she was about to reach her limit, the sound of a wheelchair turning came from outside the door. The laughing noblewomen immediately fell silent and pretended to chat with their companions. Even the arrogant Min Lan couldn't help but reveal a look of fear. They all knew that Yu Xiang had an extremely protective personality. She could bully her own people as much as she wanted, but she wouldn't allow anyone else to bully her in the slightest. But this time, everyone guessed wrong. Yu Xiang and Yu Miaoqi weren't on the same side. They were mortal enemies. What are you talking about? Why are you laughing so happily? A clear and sweet voice drifted in along with the rich fragrance of flowers. Nothing much. I'm just saying that your older sister doesn't look like you. Fan Jiaojiao hurriedly ran up and took the wheelchair from Tao Hong's hands and pushed it forward. She was afraid that her ugly words about Yu Miaoqi would be exposed by others. She looks like my mother, and I look like my brother. What's so strange about that? Yu Xiang glanced at Yu Miaoqi, whose face had turned purple. She didn't hit her when she was down. In the Marquis household, in front of the ninth princess, she could say whatever she wanted. But in front of these noblewomen, she wouldn't let them see Marquis Yonla as a joke. Min Song repeatedly agreed and took the lead to salute the ninth princess. The rest of the noblewomen hurriedly gathered around and respectfully bowed in greeting. The ninth princess had never liked crowds. She waved her hand and hid behind Yu Xiang and Fan Jiaojiao. Yu Xiang pulled her out and pushed her forward. She looked at Min Lan, who was pouting. What delicious food, drink, or fun things are there? Hurry up and bring them to the ninth princess. Didn't Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort entrust you with receiving guests today? Hurry up and bring out the tea and pastries. Min Lan pointed at a palace maid and shouted. In the end, she moved the ninth princess to the main seat and asked softly, Princess, let's play Huarongdao. Before the ninth princess could speak, Fan Jiaojiao refused in a low, muffled voice, No, you can't afford to lose. You still haven't paid back the 200 taels of silver you owed last time. Min Lan's face instantly flushed red. This made Yu Miaoqi feel much better. She secretly sneered, It said that birds of a feather flock together. These words are indeed very reasonable. Yu Xiang had a poisonous mouth, and her friends could also choke people to death with just one mouth. Yu Xiang narrowed her eyes and smiled. She lazily said, It's fine if you want to play, but you have to increase the stakes. 100 taels of silver for each loss. Do you dare? Chapter 79. A group of noble ladies gathered around to watch the game. The ninth princess and Fan Jiaojiao leaned on the back of Yu Xiang's wheelchair and watched with relish. Yu Miaoqi was also an expert in Huarongdao and hurriedly squeezed her way in. Just as she squeezed to the edge of the table, she saw that Yu Xiang had already moved the chess piece representing Cao Cao to the bottom and successfully escaped. Min Lan threw out 100 taels of silver and gritted her teeth, It doesn't count this time. Continue. All right, it doesn't count then. Yu Xiang chuckled. She didn't need to think and moved the chess piece down as soon as it was placed. No matter how Min Lan chased after her, she was always able to escape within 10 steps. It only took a quarter of an hour to play a dozen games in succession. The stack of silver banknotes piled up next to her was already a thick stack. She was afraid that it would be blown away by the wind, and she even used an ingot of silver to hold it down. Min Lan's eyes were red from losing. She discovered that the banknotes were all gone. She pulled out the hairpin on her head and wanted to continue, but was firmly held down by her two older sisters. The other noble ladies covered their mouths and chuckled. Yu Miaoqi couldn't laugh. She suddenly discovered that Yu Xiang wasn't as simple as she thought. She had a venomous mouth and a wild personality. She was willing to risk everything and put down her pride. She was also very intelligent. She was simply too difficult to deal with. Yu Xiang saw that Min Lan was fiercely glaring at her. She raised her hand and threw the banknotes away. She sneered, "I already said that I won't play with you. Every time you lose, you're like an anxious rabbit. Take it, I don't lack your money." The sound of the matriarch coughing and the crown princess repeatedly saying, "It's fine," came from the main hall next door. Yu Xiang had no choice but to swallow her unfinished words. Min Song pressed the banknotes flat and stuffed them back into her hand. He and Min Ji dragged Min Lan away. Yu Miaoqi really admired Yu Xiang. She clearly knew that the crown princess was next door, yet she still dared to treat the three Min sisters like this. Her personality was even more unreasonable than the rumors. Because the emperor had decreed that the two imperial grandsons' 100-day banquet would be held in the palace, and because the crown princess's health was not in good condition, the one-month-old banquet was just a formality. As expected, the crown princess only invited a few sisters-in-law, her maternal family, and a few families that she was very familiar with. She also separated the noblewomen from the noblewomen. She took care of them herself and handed them over to the three Min sisters. The three Min sisters didn't return until the banquet started and invited everyone to the table to eat. Yu Miaoqi saw that all the noble ladies were intentionally avoiding the ninth princess and Yu Xiang, so she didn't go over and invite a snub. She sat down with a noble lady she had just met. Yu Xiang and the other two took up a large round table for 12 people and dozens of dishes, but they didn't feel awkward at all. Instead, they were used to it. They poured wine for themselves, picked up their chopsticks, and started eating. Min Lan glanced at the three of them with a strange expression. When the banquet was about to end, Fan Jiaojiao suddenly shouted, "Where's the wine? Why is my wine gone? Give me another jug. No, give me another jug." As she spoke, she picked up an empty jug and stood up. She used her chopsticks to knock on the jug. The ninth princess leaned on her shoulder softly and slowly slid down to the ground as she stood up. She even started to snort and snort. Only Yu Xiang was leaning on her wheelchair. She swung the horsewhip with one hand and propped up her cheek with the other. Her big and round cat eyes were filled with sparkling water as she stared at Fan Jiaojiao with great interest. Her cheeks were flushed red, even more beautiful than if she had put on rouge. Her small cherry lips were slightly open, as if she was thirsty. From time to time, she would stick out her pink tongue to lick her pearly white teeth. That languid posture was filled with countless flirtatious feelings. People who saw it couldn't help but be intoxicated. Hearing the commotion, everyone turned to look. Some were surprised, some were secretly laughing, and some were worried. Min Lan's face alternated between green and white. It was very unsightly. She originally wanted to embarrass Yu Xiang. The ninth princess and Fan Jiaojiao were only incidental. She was about to become the crown prince's official wife. Who did she need to be afraid of? Right now, the ninth princess and Fan Jiaojiao had indeed made a fool of themselves. Yu Xiang, on the other hand, was perfectly fine. She didn't faint on the ground, nor did she scream. That half-drunk, half-awake little appearance was very beautiful. Min Song fiercely glared at his younger sister. Just as he was about to get up and deal with the ninth princess, he saw the crown princess enter. She instructed Mama Song to carry the ninth princess into her bedroom to sleep. She then had Fan Jiaojiao sit down in a chair. She snatched the jug of wine from her hand and sniffed it. She smiled and sighed. It was the servants of the residence who mistook green fruit wine for green fruit wine. No wonder she was so drunk. Green fruit wine was a green fruit wine that had been stored in a special wooden barrel and fermented for more than 40 years. It didn't have the coolness of fruit wine, but it had a soft and mellow taste. When it entered the mouth, it tasted sweet and sour, and it was very refreshing. When it entered the stomach, it was full of energy. Thus, it was also known as belly burn. It was a famous strong wine of the Han dynasty. An adult man only needed to drink half a bottle to become as drunk as mud. If 3 young girls drank a bottle together, it was easy to imagine how strong it was. The other tables weren't mistaken, but daughter Shan's table was mistaken. How could the servants of the Crown Prince mansion be so careless? Fan Jiaojiao's mother thoughtfully glanced at Min Lan. The Crown Princess also shook her head in her heart and excluded Min Lan from the list of concubines. She originally thought that she would be the easiest to control. However, if her jealousy was strong to such a degree, then she definitely couldn't be chosen. She didn't want to incur the Crown Prince's disgust and implicate the 2 darlings. Min Ji felt something and couldn't help but secretly rejoice. However, Min Song's head was covered in cold sweat. In this lifetime, she still wanted to have her own children. Even if she could one day sit on the Empress's throne, she still wouldn't fall into her eldest sister's trap. The matriarch lovingly stroked her granddaughter's burning cheeks and smiled, "We've caused your highness the Crown Princess to laugh. Since the banquet is already over, and your highness's body isn't feeling well, this subject will take my granddaughter and leave first to avoid making a fool of ourselves." Fan Jiaojiao's mother hurriedly agreed. The Crown Princess really couldn't hold on much longer, so she didn't urge them to stay. She had someone pass a message to Commandant Yu in the front courtyard. At the Crown Prince's banquet, Yu Pinyin and Shen Yuanqi were both existences that no one cared about. However, there were slight differences. Yu Pinyin's personality was too cold, causing people to fear him. Shen Yuanqi's background was lowly, causing people to despise him. After receiving the message from the Crown Princess, Yu Pinyin immediately stood up and bid farewell to the Crown Prince. Shen Yuanqi also excused himself, saying that he was going to go the same way as Commandant Yu. The Crown Prince didn't force them to stay and had someone escort them out. Yu Pinyin strode towards the second gate, closely followed by Shen Yuanqi. Because this person was his elder brother-in-law, Yu Pinyin didn't chase him away and pretended not to see him. As soon as the 2 stepped out of the front courtyard, they saw the matriarch bending over and talking to her granddaughter, who was sitting in a wheelchair. Yu Xiang had a pair of big and round almond eyes. Her black and bright pupils seemed to be immersed in clear spring water, sparkling with rippling light. No matter what the matriarch said, she would slowly nod her head. Then, she would open her small mouth and smile very foolishly. As soon as Shen Yuanqi saw her dazed appearance, his heart softened into a mess. His footsteps unconsciously quickened, and he actually walked in front of Commandant Yu. Hearing the footsteps, the matriarch stopped teasing her granddaughter and turned her head to look. The impatient and handsome face of the top scholar came into view. This person was Xiang Er's older brother. The matriarch was clear about this, so she couldn't help but raise her guard. Fortunately, Shen Yuanqi found his reason in time. He suddenly stopped and bowed to the matriarch. Then, he faintly glanced at Yu Miaoqi, who seemed to have been struck by lightning. The matriarch also noticed Yu Miaoqi's strange behavior. Her expression was slightly mocking. She didn't need to send people to investigate to know that the rumors about Zhuang Yuan were all spread by Yu Miaoqi. Her goal was to ruin Zhuang Yuan's career and drive him out of the capital. In the end, she grew up in a small family and her knowledge was shallow. She didn't think that the emperor would use Zhuang Yuan not only because of his talent, but also because of his background. In the future, when Zhuang Yuan was promoted to an important official, she didn't know what Yu Miaoqi's expression would be like. Buddha said that a fool gets rid of things but not of the heart. A wise man gets rid of the heart but not the matter. This Yu Miaoqi was truly a hopeless fool. The matriarch secretly sighed. Yu Miaoqi originally thought that Shen Yuanqi's current situation would be in dire straits. In a few months, he would be sent out of the capital by the emperor and would never be able to advance in his life. Who would have thought that he would be able to see Shen Yuanqi at the imperial grandson's one-month birthday banquet? How could a minor official like him, who was only a minor fifth-rank official, have the qualifications? Her mind was in a mess and she didn't have a clue. Yu Miaoqi unconsciously took a few steps back and hid behind the matriarch and Mama. Shen Yuanqi didn't even look at her out of the corner of his eye. He only stared at his younger sister who was smiling foolishly at him. His heart was filled with endless love. She was the only family member left in the world. In addition, Yu Xiang's personality was straightforward and unrestrained. In Shen Yuanqi's eyes, she was really lovable. Now, there was also Yu Miaoqi, this pretentious and vicious person, standing beside her. He loved his younger sister to the bone and wished that he could immediately bring her home and hide her. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked, "Xiang. Miss you, what's wrong?" The servants mistakenly served green fruit wine as green fruit wine. The little girl accidentally drank too much and is now muddle-headed. The matriarch helplessly smiled and couldn't help but reach out to poke her granddaughter's soft cheeks. Yu Xiang blinked her big, watery eyes and looked at her, then she grinned foolishly. That cute and naive appearance made Shen Yuanqi's eyes burn with jealousy. He couldn't help but take a step forward, but Yu Pinyin waved his sleeve and brushed him away. That light but cold gaze made him instantly regain his rationality. Yu Pinyin walked in front of his younger sister and reached out to pinch the tip of her nose. Yu Xiang's unfocused eyes suddenly lit up. She plunged into the youth's arms and called out sweetly, "Brother, carry me home. I want to go home." The matriarch smiled and sighed. She doesn't recognize anyone when she's drunk. She only recognizes her brother. Little heartless. Yu Pinyin cheerfully chuckled, "You don't even recognize me. That's heartless." After saying that, he carried the little girl on his back and strode away. Yu Xiang buried her burning little face into her brother's neck. When she noticed that he was trembling, she couldn't help but giggle. She patted his head with her little hand and shouted, "Go." Being ridden like a horse, Yu Pinyin didn't get angry. Instead, the doting expression on his face deepened, and he patted the little girl's soft and tender buttocks without a trace. Shen Yuanqi exchanged pleasantries with the matriarch while staring at the brother and sister in front of him. His heart was sour and bitter, and he felt very uncomfortable. Yu Miaoqi felt a million times worse than him. The once intimate siblings had become mortal enemies, and now the family she recognized was indifferent and hostile to her, while pampering a bastard child. Although she returned to the powerful marquis household, it was as if she had nothing. The author has something to say: "Thank you to my tycoon angels, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original version. Moi." Chapter 80. Lying on her brother's broad back, Yu Xiang felt an inexplicable joy in her heart. When they passed by a willow tree, she broke off a branch and waved it in the air while singing, "He scolded me without any reason. He scolded me so hard that I can't say anything. Just now I met my mother-in-law on the road and she hit me. My stomach is full of bitterness. I thought my husband knew my heart, but who knew he would also be inconsiderate. Yu Lang, you said something about father and daughter conspiring together and having a vicious heart. You must remember to send clothes and shoes to my door. If I wanted to marry another man, why would I need to give you silver tails in the garden? If husband and wife don't suffer together, why would I come to the execution ground today? Look at me wearing mourning clothes. Do you think I want to be a bride? This was a song from the Yu opera, Bloody Handprint. It was about the Wang family's daughter going to the execution ground to complain about her husband's injustice. Although Yu Xiang was drunk and muddle-headed, she didn't forget to change Lin Lang to Yu Lang, treating her brother as her husband. Yu Pinyin chuckled as he walked. He turned his head to look at the little girl's delicate face. He saw her holding back her tears and singing, "I thought my husband knew my heart, but who knew he would also be inconsiderate." She looked like a young wife who was wronged by her husband, as if she was going to cry bitterly in the next moment. Yu Pinyin restrained himself from kissing her slightly pouting lips in front of everyone's eyes. He only patted her buttocks and said in a hoarse voice, "It's husband who wronged Mississippi. When we get home, I'll definitely apologize to Mississippi. Be good and hold on to husband tightly. Be careful not to fall." Yu Xiang thought for a long time before she finally digested these words. Satisfied, she once again held on to her brother's neck and sang, "Drunken Imperial Concubine." The old lady walked slowly, so Shen Yuanqi could only walk slowly with her. As they walked further and further away, they could only hear Yu Xiang's babbling, but not Yu Pinyin's words. When they walked out of the door, the carriage was already prepared. Shen Yuanqi reluctantly watched his sister leave. When Yu Miaoqi walked past him, she suddenly whispered, "Dage, do you have time to talk? Let's meet at the Purple Pavilion in 3 days." Shen Yuanqi's lips moved slightly and his expression was cold. "I'm sorry, Miss Yu. You've got the wrong person. Your eldest brother is over there." He pointed at Yu Pinyin, who was carrying Yu Xiang into the car. Yu Miaoqi looked at him sadly. Seeing that he was indifferent, she could only walk towards the carriage with small steps. With such an attitude, it would be impossible for them to reconcile. Yu Pinyin and Yu Xiang were sitting in the same carriage. The little girl seemed to feel a little thirsty after singing Drunken Noble Consort. His fingertips lingered on her shoulders for a long time. In the end, he swept off her loose blouse bit by bit. He covered her smooth back with his palms and rubbed it hard. His rough palm rubbed against the shoulder blades on her back. That feeling was indescribably limp and numb. Yu Xiang slightly narrowed her eyes and moaned like a kitten. Yu Pinyin's originally pitch-black eyes didn't have any light at this time. He suddenly pressed the little girl into his arms and madly sucked on her soft red lips. At the same time, his large palm moved from her back to her chest and slowly rubbed her round and perky mounds. For a moment, only the sound of lips and tongues intertwining and heavy breathing could be heard in the carriage. After a long time, Yu Pinyin reluctantly let go of her nimble little tongue and lowered his eyes to see what kind of expression his little sister had. Yu Xiang was completely drunk and confused. After the kiss, she felt that her head lacked oxygen. Smacking her red and swollen lips, she sweetly fell asleep. Her 2 small hands habitually grabbed her brother's lapels. There was no shock, no disgust, and no loss of what to do. The little girl actually fell asleep just like that. Yu Pinyin stared at her for a long time. In the end, he held his forehead and chuckled. The carriage slowly drew close to the Marquis household. Tao Hong and Lu Lu rushed over to pick up their master. However, they saw their master wrapped in Master Ho's outer clothes and being carried horizontally by Master Ho. Her little face was buried in his arms and only the tips of her red ears could be seen. A sweet and rich lotus fragrance permeated through the cloth. Yu Pinyin walked around Tao Hong and Lu Lu in large strides. He entered the west wing and said in a deep voice, "Bring a basin of water and a box of snow cream." Tao Hong obeyed and went to fetch water. Lu Lu rummaged through the trunk and took out a box of snow cream. Yu Pinyin gently placed his little sister on the couch. He lifted the outer robe wrapped around her body and reached out to comb her slightly messy forehead hair. Lulu came forward to take a look. She couldn't help but gasp in shock. Because her master's body temperature was too high after drinking, she was already covered in sweat. Her hair was wet and stuck to the side of her cheeks. There was even a strand of hair between her delicate lips. Her cheeks were faintly red and her body was soft as if there were no bones. That delicate and weak sleeping appearance could be described as lively and fragrant, beautiful and boundless. It would not be an exaggeration to describe her. What was even more impossible to ignore were the little red marks on her neck and shoulders. They were printed on her porcelain white and smooth skin. It was an indescribable charm and gentleness. She looked as if she had been doted on. Even Lulu, an inexperienced little girl, felt her heart race at this moment, let alone a hot-blooded man. Master Ho would never allow an outsider to treat her master like this. So these marks were all made by Master Ho, right? But they were brother and sister. Lulu anxiously looked at Master Ho. She heard Tao Hong's footsteps outside the door. Without thinking, she put down the ointment, went out to fetch a basin of water, and sent Tao Hong away. It was fine if she was the only one who saw this terrible scene, but if Tao Hong saw it, wouldn't it harm her? Yu Pinyan's expression was as usual. He gently took off his little sister's shoes, socks, and smock. He wrung out the handkerchief and carefully helped her wipe her exposed skin. After he finished, he applied a little cream and smeared it on the red marks. As long as she slept, these marks would be melted away by the ointment. After he finished applying the ointment, he pinched his little sister's soft little hand and rubbed her full lips. In the end, he couldn't suppress the desire in his heart. He leaned over and pecked from her small mouth to her forehead. Only then did he sigh and cover his little sister with a thin blanket. Lulu stood stiffly by the couch. She didn't dare to raise her hand to wipe away the large beads of sweat that fell from her forehead. Yu Pinyan stared at her and said in a deep voice, "If you don't want to die, then watch your mouth. This servant knows." This servant didn't see anything. Lulu answered in a trembling voice. Her head was very low, and she didn't dare to look at Master Ho's handsome face. Only when the sound of his footsteps faded away did she weakly sit down on the bed. Brother and sister incest, what kind of situation was this? She could only blame her little miss for being too beautiful and too clingy. When she saw Master Ho, she was like a pair of conjoined twins. She didn't care about the boundaries between men and women. With such a delicate and sweet person by his side all day long, which man wouldn't be moved? Lulu was exasperated at her master's failure to live up to her expectations. She waved her fist at her master on the couch and resigned to her fate as she went to pour water. When Yu Xiang woke up, it was already evening. The yellow sun hung in the west, and the sky was covered with large patches of fiery clouds. It looked very magnificent. She stretched lazily and stared at the clouds in the sky in a daze. Lulu came in to help her dress. After hesitating for a while, she suddenly asked, "Miss, do you remember what happened after you got drunk?" It would have been better if she didn't ask. Once she asked, many blurry scenes poured out. The scene that left the deepest impression was that she was humming "Flower as a Matchmaker" while teasing her older brother. She even took a few bites from his mouth. Heavens, Yu Xiang covered her face and rolled backwards, wrapping herself in the quilt. Lulu hurriedly pulled her out and asked anxiously, "Miss, what did you remember? Quickly tell this servant. If there's anything, we can think of a solution together." Who would have thought that when she lifted the quilt, what she saw wasn't a face full of tears, but a face full of naughty laughter. Yu Xiang narrowed her cat eyes and laughed to herself for a while before she unconcernedly said, "Nothing major happened. I just sang a section of "Flower as a Matchmaker" and took liberties with older brother, thinking he was Li Yu. After she said this, she burst into laughter again. Lulu really wanted to kneel down in front of her master. She was already bitten until there were red marks all over her body, yet she still thought that she took liberties with someone. Just how heartless was she? However, when she thought of Master Ho's warning before he left, she had no choice but to suppress her bellyful of words. After calming herself down, Lulu continued to dress her master, but she heard someone report from outside, "Miss, Duchess Jingwa and Miss Chang have arrived. Behind them is Jiu Furen." Chapter 81. Yuxiang put on her clothes and sat in front of the dressing table to draw her eyebrows. After a while, Madame Sun arrived and shouted as soon as she entered the door, "Xiang, Aunt's good Xiang, why haven't you sent money to the residence for a long time? Your uncle and I almost don't have enough to eat. Hurry up and give me the money. I'm going to adopt Lin Laowu's son under your uncle's name. Lin Laowu insists on 600 taels, otherwise he won't let him go. Whether your uncle and I will have an heir to send us off in the future depends on this. Xiang, you must not abandon us." Madame Sun only gave birth to a daughter and was preparing for a son when her husband took too much 5 minerals powder and became impotent. The family property was also taken away by the first branch. From then on, they fell into a miserable state. She was truly helpless and could only rely on her sister-in-law to survive. Who knew that her sister-in-law was also useless? After her husband died, it was as if the sky had collapsed. She actually closed the door to her guests and lived in seclusion. Fortunately, her niece was reliable. Not only did she receive 200 taels of silver every month, but she also sent carts of gifts home during festivals. Her life became much better. Ever since her niece took charge of the family for 4 years, she had never cut off her uncle's salary. It was rare for her to ignore everything like this. Madame Sun restrained herself for a few days. Seeing that the sun in her hands was about to fly away, she hurriedly came to find her. "You want to adopt Lin Laowu's son?" Yuxiang carefully brushed her eyebrows one by one with a brush and said casually, "I remember that Lin Laowu's youngest son is already 19 years old. Can you take care of him well?" Seeing that there was a chance, Madame Sun hurriedly went over and said with a flattering smile, "Of course, of course. Our families are neighbors." His mother gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. How could she take care of them all? She always entrusted Lin Yun to me. Although we don't have the status of mother and son, we are closer than his biological mother. Lin Laowu's second son wants to marry manager Fang's daughter, but he can't afford the betrothal gift. So, he agreed to let me adopt Lin Yun. She took out a handkerchief and pretended to wipe her tears. "Xiang, your uncle and I have been living a hard life. We don't even have someone to take care of us when we're old. Please help your aunt this time." Yuxiang put down the brush and smeared a bit of rouge on the side of her cheeks. She carefully applied it and sighed, "It's not that I don't want to help Auntie, but it's just a mere 600 taels. In the past, even the change that slipped through my fingers was more than this. But things are different now. Auntie, haven't you heard? My twin sister has returned. Now, this prefecture U is under her and my mother's management. There's nothing for me to do." "What? How many days has it been? Have they not thought of sending you and uncle any money? I've already told you about it." When it came to Madame Sun's family, she had never been stingy with money. In any case, it was all from the Lin clan's pockets, so why not? Madame Sun suddenly understood. She gritted her teeth and said, "So that's how it is. I was wondering why Xiang was so heartless and suddenly didn't care about us. I've been busy these past few days with the matter of adopting a stepson. I was only waiting for your mother to bring your sister to pay us a visit. Who would have thought that they would completely disregard your uncle and me? It's fine if they didn't come to acknowledge us, but they even cut off our money." Yuxiang sighed, "Not to mention cutting off your money, when we were handing over the accounts, they made a mistake and blamed it on me. They insisted on finding old madam to be the judge. I'm afraid of them. In the future, I won't dare to touch these accounts again. If auntie wants money, you can ask mother for it. Mother still cares about uncle, but she probably forgot because she was busy. However, I need to remind auntie that my sister is very stingy. I'm afraid that she won't easily fork out money. When she heard this, Madam's son hated Yu Miaoqi to the bone. Her entire family relied on the 200 taels that Yu Xiang gave them every month to survive. If they were suddenly cut off, wouldn't they starve to death? Then what should we do? Madam's son asked anxiously while twisting her handkerchief. With Yu Pinyan's pressure, she didn't dare to behave atrociously in the Marquis household. Yu Xiang reminded her while applying lipstick, you just have to go and make trouble with mother. After a few more times, she'll naturally agree. Could she just watch as uncle's family line ends? Moreover, mother's dowry has already been taken back from the old madam. She doesn't trust the old madam's people, so she'll definitely have to change the shopkeepers. Instead of benefiting outsiders, it's better to help your own family. You and uncle should discuss with her and see if you can take over a few shops. This is also a long-term livelihood for your family, isn't it? After receiving Yu Xiang's advice, Madam's son was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. She flung her handkerchief aside and rushed to the main room. She had long had her eyes on her younger sister-in-law's dowry, but it was all in the matriarch's hands. She didn't dare to have any delusions. Now that the Lin clan had taken it back, she naturally had to ruthlessly squeeze a layer of oil and water. She was afraid of the matriarch and Yu Xiang, but she never put the Lin clan in her eyes. Duchess Jingwa knew that the matriarch definitely wouldn't see her, so she set her sights on the Lin clan. In the early years, the Lin clan was very fond of her daughter. Perhaps they would soften when they saw her. When the Lin clan saw Chang Yafu, sure enough, they were extremely happy. They took her small hand and looked her up and down, saying that she had grown up to be beautiful. Duchess Jingwa saw that the atmosphere was just right, so she asked tentatively, "Younger sister, Fu's mourning is about to end, and Yan-er is already 21 years old. Shouldn't we hold a wedding? If we delay any longer, when will we be able to hold a grandson?" Duchess Jingwa was also anxious. Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't have said such explicit words in front of her daughter. The Lin clan naturally wanted to quickly find a daughter-in-law who was of the same mind as them, so they could win over their son. She nodded and said, "That's right. The children have all grown up. In a little bit, I'll discuss it with the matriarch and choose an auspicious date to come to our house and make a decision. When will Fu's mourning be removed?" Duchess Jingwa's face first lit up with joy, but then she became worried. "The day after tomorrow, sister-in-law will bring the children over to have some fun. It's just that old madam seems to have some misunderstandings about our Fu. Will she disagree?" "What misunderstandings?" The Lin clan's heartstrings instantly tightened. If the matriarch didn't agree, she really couldn't make the decision, nor did she dare to make the decision. Chang Yafu's expression was awkward. Duchess Jingwa couldn't say it clearly, so she vaguely said, "Tch, it's just that their children had some private conflicts, so they were angry for a moment. After this incident, everything will be fine." The Lin clan hung their heads in silence. Using the word angry to describe Yu Pinyan truly felt out of place no matter how one looked at it. With his decisive personality, how could he be angry with someone? If he was pushed too far, he'd cut off all ties. If Chang Yafu hadn't really touched on his taboo, the two families wouldn't have gotten to the point of breaking off the engagement. And if she agreed to Duchess Jingwa's request, she would be going against Yu Pinyan and the matriarch. If she made a scene, she would lose face. If the Lin clan could think of it, Yu Miaoqi could naturally think of it as well. She was already in a bad mood from meeting Shen Yuanqi today, and now she found out that her future sister-in-law was also useless. She had already started to have a dirty relationship with Yupinian. If that was the case, who would dare to make the decision to welcome her into the family? My eldest brother has never been angry with others. Madam, it's best if you make things clear, so that my mother won't be in a difficult situation. Her smile was appropriate, but her words were extremely impolite. Chang Yafu's lips turned green, and he anxiously looked towards Duchess Jinghua's wife. Duchess Jinghua's wife lifted the lid of her teacup from time to time, then suddenly sighed softly, "Forget it. No matter how much I say, I'll just be asking for a snub. Whether this marriage succeeds or not will depend entirely on your family. But for better or worse, our two families have been friends for several decades. If we can't become in-laws, there's no need to ruin our friendship. Younger sister, pass on a message to the matriarch. Just say that our Chang clan has wronged Yandere. We only hope that we can personally apologize to Yandere on the day of the wedding." Seeing that Duchess Jinghua's wife was so understanding and reasonable, the Lin clan sighed in relief and repeatedly said that they would definitely pay a visit on the day of the wedding. Only then did the Chang clan's mother and daughter stand up to bid farewell. As they exited the courtyard, they exchanged bitter glances. As soon as the two people left, Sunshine arrived. She didn't even wait to sit down before pouring out her grievances. In the end, she asked the Lin clan for 2,000 taels of silver and the right to manage several shops. Everyone says that kind people are bullied and kind horses are ridden. Sunshine couldn't afford to offend Yuxiang and the matriarch, but she treated the Lin clan as a soft persimmon that she could bully however she liked. The Lin clan truly loved their younger brother. They only hesitated for a moment before going to open the dowry, but Yu Miaoqi firmly held them back. The Lin clan had fallen ill, so Yu Miaoqi had been taking care of the manor's affairs and dowry these days. She didn't know why, but the shops that were flourishing in Yuxiang's hands were experiencing serious losses in just a month after she took over. If it wasn't because of a problem with the supply of goods, then it was because the customers were making a fuss and it was difficult to clean up. She also fired several experienced shopkeepers in succession. With no one to deal with these problems, they became bigger and bigger. Several shops had no choice but to temporarily close down. She had to fill in a hole here and there. The money in her purse had long been unable to make ends meet. Where would she find 2,000 taels to give to this family of blood-sucking leeches? Moreover, she had already heard clearly about what kind of person her uncle was from Mama Kim. The Lin clan's large foundation had almost been squandered by him. How could her small shops be enough for him to squander? No, she wouldn't give him the money, and she definitely wouldn't give him the shops. When Sunshine saw that her attitude was so firm, she immediately began to make a scene. The maidservants waiting outside the hall first heard a series of loud bangs, followed by Sunshine's vulgar curses. She said things like, "Who do you think you are? You're not even worthy of carrying Xiang'er shoes. Where did you find this bastard child in the Lin clan? Hurry up and throw him back." All kinds of curses were incessant, causing the servants passing by to stop and listen. Yu Miaoqi and the Lin clan's faces were almost torn off by Sunshine. In the end, they had no choice but to give her a few expensive pieces of jewelry and let her take them away. They also gave her a few shops to help manage. Sunshine was satisfied and left with a smile on her face while carrying a small package. When Yuxiang and the matriarch heard this, they both sighed at the same time. Evil people will naturally be dealt with by evil people. On this day, some people couldn't sleep at night, while others naturally slept soundly. When it was 3:15 in the morning, someone suddenly knocked on the door of the Marquis household. The sound was dull and urgent. The gatekeeper opened the small corner door and saw that it was a bodyguard from the Crown Prince mansion. He repeatedly said that he wanted to see Commander Yu. Yu Pinyin hurriedly rushed over and ordered someone to invite the bodyguard captain to the main hall for questioning. The matriarch and the other members of the Lin clan also hid behind a screen to listen for news. Their faces were filled with panic. Reporting to Commander Yu, the Crown Prince has ordered this lowly one to invite you and Miss 3 to the mansion for a chat. The bodyguard captain half knelt and saluted. What happened? Why does he even want to invite this marquis's younger sister? Yu Pinyin frowned. Yu Xiang, who had been yawning behind the screen, immediately woke up. The bodyguard captain looked left and right, then leaned close to his ear and whispered. Yu Pinyin listened expressionlessly and sent the bodyguard captain away. Then, he picked up his younger sister and walked into the pitch-black night. The author has something to say. Thank you to my tycoon angels, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original novel. Moi. Chapter 82. After the group left, the matriarch could no longer sleep. Draped in a robe, she sat cross-legged on the soft couch and chanted scriptures. The Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi also stayed behind to wait for news. A few candlelight flickered in the wind, casting their shadows on the wall. One moment it was long and the next moment, it was short and the next moment, it was thick and the next moment, it was faint and the next moment, it was like a room full of demons and monsters. The atmosphere was very gloomy and ominous. The matriarch opened her eyes to look at the sky, and many wrinkles appeared on her face. The Lin clan was also very flustered and stammered, "Mother, why do you think His Highness the Crown Prince is looking for them in the middle of the night? It's fine if he called Yandere away, but why did he call Xiang'er away as well? What big thing could have happened? Don't tell me the Crown Princess isn't safe." The matriarch glared at her fiercely and sternly said, "Shut up. Everything can wait until the children come back." Yu Miaoqi's brows moved slightly. She guessed that something had happened to the Crown Princess, and the incident had implicated Yu Xiang. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been called away in the middle of the night. Could it be that she was poisoned again? Thinking of this, she covered her mouth with a handkerchief and slowly smiled. Yu Pinyin and Yu Xiang were directly led by the guards to the Crown Princess's room. There were many people standing at the door, including the Crown Prince Mansion's side consorts, the 3 Min sisters, the 9th princess, and the Crown Prince. Everyone had an anxious expression on their faces. "Yi Feng, you're here." The Crown Prince quickly stepped forward and patted the top of Yu Xiang's head. He warmly said, "Xiang'er, the Crown Princess kept saying that she wanted to see you when she was sick. Otherwise, we wouldn't have called you over in the middle of the night. In a moment, when the imperial physician comes out, you can go in and accompany the Crown Princess." Yu Xiang nodded in acknowledgement. Yu Pinyin placed his sister in the wheelchair and handed her over to the 9th princess, who hurried over. He walked to the side with the Crown Prince to talk. "Your Highness, what exactly happened?" "The Crown Princess has been poisoned." The two of them avoided the womenfolk and found a secluded corner to talk. But just half a sentence was enough to make Yu Xiang shocked. "The Crown Princess was poisoned? What kind of poison was it? Where is the next step? And why did you bring me here in the middle of the night? Was it really the Crown Princess's order and not the Crown Prince's paranoia?" Yu Xiang's forehead was covered in a thin layer of cold sweat when he thought of the exorcism grass that he had given to the Crown Princess today. The 9th princess didn't know anything about this matter. Su Ce Fei and the others didn't say anything. Min Lan suddenly rushed forward and fiercely slapped her. "You poisonous woman, Jie treated you so well, but you secretly tried to kill her. If anything happens to elder sister, I want you to die with her. How could Yu Xiang just sit there and take the beating for nothing?" He quickly blocked the attack and then lashed out with his horsewhip. Min Lan failed to hit someone, but there was a bright red mark on his neck. From afar, it looked like his throat had been slit. Her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She reached out with her sharp fingernails to scratch Yu Xiang's bright and beautiful face. Her hatred towards Yuxiang didn't just come from the other's sharp words and arrogant actions, it also came from this unparalleled face. It was said that beautiful women despised each other. When it came to jealousy, Min Lan was one of the best. Min Song and Min Ji couldn't hold her back. The ninth princess wanted to stand in front of her good friend but was brushed aside. Yuxiang lashed out a few more times with the whip. This time, she wasn't polite and all the whips were aimed at Min Lan's face. Min Lan didn't have the mind to pinch people and hurriedly covered his head to dodge. The scene was a bit out of control. Su Fei wanted to go forward and stop them, but Yuxiang stopped first. He sneered, "The Tai is still inside taking the pulse. What are your intentions in making such a ruckus? Are you intentionally disturbing the Tai? If you have something to say it properly. Don't get physical." When it came to getting physical, who could beat her? Even if his leg was broken, Yuxiang was still an existence that couldn't be provoked. Min Lan calmed down. She rubbed her scarred arm as she accused in a low voice, "Yuxiang, don't pretend. If it wasn't for the poison in the potted plant you sent, Jie wouldn't be bleeding so much." "Where is she bleeding?" Yuxiang calmly asked. With her brother protecting her, she wasn't scared at all. "Her nose is bleeding. It's already been bleeding for many hours. She also has a headache. It hurts so much that she's rolling around, but she still won't let go of your potted plant." The ninth princess was about to cry. It was the first time she had seen such a tragic scene. Yuxiang was silent for a moment and then slowly said, "I've already raised that potted plant for more than 3 years. Even though the fragrance is unique, it can only repel mosquitoes. If it was poisonous, the hundreds of people in our prefecture you would have died a long time ago. Also, why would I want to harm the crown princess? What good would it do me?" Min Lan immediately sneered, "No good? You have a lot of good. You've long coveted Jie's position as the official consort. If you get rid of Jie, you can replace her, right?" Yuxiang's eyes were full of contempt. "I'm a cripple. Don't even talk about being the official consort of His Highness the Crown Prince. Even if I married into a normal family, they wouldn't want me. All the noble maidens in the capital would stand in a row for people to choose from. The Emperor and His Highness the Crown Prince would definitely not choose me. I still have this much self-awareness. Don't use your thoughts to judge me. I'm not as ambitious as you." These words were too reasonable and no one could refute them. What was even more embarrassing was the last sentence. It hit the nail on the head. Inside the room, the crown princess's moans suddenly stopped. It was unknown if it had touched her heartstrings. Everyone's eyes swept over Min Lan, their eyes full of hidden meaning. Min Lan's face flushed red. She pointed a trembling finger at Yuxiang. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't make a sound. Moreover, the crown prince and Yupinian had unknowingly stood 3 meters away, looking over with cold and stern expressions. "Your Jie is seriously ill inside the room. What kind of scandal is it for you to make a ruckus outside? Why haven't you withdrawn yet?" The crown prince had always been gentle and refined. When his face suddenly darkened, it was truly terrifying. Min Lan's eyes were filled with tears. She raised her head to stare at the crown prince's handsome face. She cried out pitifully, Your Highness, why do you treat me like this?" She looked exactly like an infatuated woman meeting a heartless man. Yuxiang couldn't bear to look at her and turned her face away. Several side concubines looked at her with disdain. Min Song and Min Ji were abnormally embarrassed. They wished they could hide their heads in their bosoms. In the room, the crown princess suddenly shrieked. Her high-pitched voice was filled with deep fear, causing everyone's hearts to jump. Yupinian hurriedly bent down to press his younger sister's face into his chest. He gently patted her back to comfort her. "Xianger, don't be afraid. Gage is here. Gidge won't let anyone hurt you. Finally, he nibbled on her earlobe, emphasizing in a low voice that couldn't be heard, even if it was the emperor. Yuxiang's stiff body slowly relaxed. She scratched her numb earlobe and raised her small face to give her brother a sweet smile. Yu Pinyin quickly rubbed her full, dark red lips. Then he straightened up and looked towards the room door that was suddenly pushed open. He saw the Grand Physician wiping the sweat from his forehead as he stepped over the threshold. He bowed and reported, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Her Highness the Crown Princess has passed away." Before the Crown Prince could speak, side concubine Su and Min Lan shouted in unison, "What? Passed away? Didn't she die? Are you sure you didn't say anything wrong?" There was a strong sense of disappointment hidden in the two's words. As long as the people present weren't deaf, they could tell. The Crown Prince's joyous expression suddenly sank. The loud sound of a cup shattering came from inside the room. The Grand Physician faintly glanced at the two and nodded, saying, "Yes, the Crown Princess wasn't poisoned. She is now safe and her life won't be in danger in the future. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please come in. This subject will explain to you in detail." The Crown Prince immediately followed him inside. Yuxiang craned her neck to take a look. Her heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. Yu Pinyin grabbed her chin and turned her face around. He whispered, "Don't look around. Gidge will tell you what you want to know when we get back. The Crown Princess being safe should be related to the potted plant you sent." Many candles were lit in the room, illuminating the four corners of the room. There were many cotton balls stained with blood on the ground, and the air was filled with a sweet smell mixed with the smell of blood, but it did not make people feel uncomfortable. The Crown Princess was half lying on the couch. Her clothes were stained with blood from her nose. Her face was even paler than before, but the lifeless look in her eyes had completely disappeared. "Zhen, you're really okay?" In the end, they were a young couple. The Crown Princess' position in the Crown Prince's heart was irreplaceable. When he saw her bright eyes, he was so moved that he almost cried. The Crown Princess was already crying. Large droplets of tears rolled down her cheeks and quickly soaked her clothes. The Crown Prince didn't care that she was stained with blood. He held her in his arms and carefully examined her, as if he couldn't get enough of looking at her in this lifetime. The Grand Physician lowered his head and listened to the couple talk. When he saw that they had finished speaking, he walked forward with a small teacup. The Crown Princess immediately withdrew from the Crown Prince's arms and tightly hugged the small potted plant Yuxiang gave her. She blocked the small teacup, as if there was a demon trapped inside and if she opened the lid, it would pounce on her. The Crown Prince was puzzled. When he looked at the teacup, goosebumps rose all over his body. At the bottom of the white porcelain teacup, there was an 8-inch long dark leech that was as thick as a thumb. Because it couldn't find any blood to feed on, it raised its thin head and moved around the walls of the teacup. The Grand Physician looked at it and also felt disgusted. He closed the teacup with a bang and slowly said, "Reporting to Your Highness the Crown Prince, this leech crawled out from the Crown Princess' nostrils. Based on its size, it should have lived in Her Highness' body for more than half a year. After Her Highness gave birth, Her Highness' vital energy and blood were greatly damaged. This leech didn't have enough blood in her nose to feed on, so it burrowed into Her Highness' brain. This is the main culprit that caused Her Highness serious illness. Now that it has been removed, Her Highness only needs to take some nourishing medicine. In less than 2 or 3 months, she will be as good as new." The Crown Prince was dumbfounded. Then, as if he had been struck by lightning, he asked in shock, "Leeches only live in sewage and mud. The Crown Princess has never been close to such a salty place. How did this leech burrow into her brain?" The Grand Physician was stumped by the question and couldn't answer for a long time. The Crown Prince suddenly sneered. The joy in his heart was replaced by a towering fury. If it wasn't the crown princess who had infected herself, then it was someone who had done it. Such an insidious method was simply unheard of and unheard of. And to be able to implant such an evil object into the crown princess' nostrils without anyone noticing, this person must be someone close to the crown princess. If this leech hadn't been flushed out by the nosebleed, how long could this culprit have hidden? How many people would they have used this method to secretly harm? The crown prince only felt his hair stand on end as he thought about it deeply. The grand physician had never seen the crown prince so angry and couldn't help but feel anxious. He quickly explained, reporting to Your Highness the Crown Prince, Her Highness the Crown Princess was able to avert danger entirely because of this small tree. This matter can be considered extremely fortunate. If the leech had entered her brain, there would be no other medicine in the world that could cure her except for this small tree. Yet, at the most dangerous moment, this divine medicine was sent directly to Her Highness. It can be seen that Your Highness and Her Highness are blessed by the heavens. The crown prince turned his head and looked at the potted plant with an astonished gaze. The two of them went straight to the study, and the imperial physician followed closely behind with a teacup in his hand. The womenfolk acknowledged and respectfully sent off the crown prince and Commandant Yu. Soon after, they entered the room to take a look. Min Lan was at the front. When Su Sofei stepped over the threshold, she tripped heavily. Her calm expression instantly cracked, revealing deep panic. Nurse Song and two palace maids came out to greet them. They bent down and lifted Yu Xiang's wheelchair over the threshold. With tears in her eyes, she thanked them in a low voice, which made Yu Xiang look at her several times in confusion. The crown princess had already changed into a set of pure white undergarments. The cotton balls on the ground had also been cleaned. The windows on all sides were open, and a cool breeze blew in, carrying the fragrance of the vermilion tree everywhere. This scene was truly tranquil and comfortable. In addition, the crown princess's bright and spirited eyes looked over. There was no sign of dying at all. Min Lan could not hide his thoughts. The curve of his lips was as stiff as it could be. On the other hand, it was Su Sofei who quickly stepped forward to help the crown princess drink medicine. The word joy was written on her face. The crown princess's sharp gaze swept across everyone's faces. She waved her hand and sighed, Ben Gong is tired. Xiao Jiu and Xianger, stay. Everyone else, leave. Coming to visit in the middle of the night, it has been hard on you. When Ben Gong gets better in the future, Ben Gong will definitely personally come to thank you. Everyone said they did not dare. They bowed and left in a single file. The crown princess's cold expression immediately warmed. She smiled and waved at the two young maidservants, come here quickly. Were you scared today? Scared to death, quick. The two of them were indeed sisters for many years. They replied in unison, and even the way they rubbed their chests was the same. The crown princess's mood became more relaxed. After experiencing such a sinister scheme, she loved the simple the ninth princess and the straightforward Yu Xiang to the bone. She repeatedly waved her hand and ordered Song Mama to bring 2 bowls of bird's nest for the two of them to calm their nerves. After eating the sweet bird's nest, the two of them's pale cheeks slowly flushed red. Their tightly knitted brows also relaxed. The ninth princess asked without hesitation, Royal sister-in-law, what illness did you have? Is it really better? It was just a minor illness. Now that the illness has been removed, it is naturally better. This is all thanks to the worm bite that Xianger sent over. The crown princess patted Yu Xiang's soft head. Worm bite? What's that? Yu Xiang blinked her large eyes. There, that's the worm bite. That's what the Nanyang people call it. This item can dispel illness and evil spirits. It is a rare treasure in the world. The crown princess pointed at the potted plant beside the bed. Yuxiang nodded in realization. There was no joy or pity on her face, which made the crown princess smile gently. The ninth princess put down the bowl and reached out to take the potted plant. The crown princess hurriedly helped her up. Song Mama and the two senior palace maids also raised their hands to catch her, afraid that she would accidentally drop the treasure. The ninth princess was a tactless person. She clumsily turned the potted plant and drooled, "It's so fragrant. Can it be eaten?" "It can't be eaten." The crown princess covered her mouth and chuckled. Yuxiang sighed, "If I'd known that this thing was so useful, I wouldn't have lowered the price when I sold it to the sea merchant. I only bought a bag of seeds for 2 taels of silver. Even though I only managed to plant this potted plant, I still got a great deal out of it." She seemed to realize that she had given such a cheap gift and even exposed it in front of her master. She coughed awkwardly and her eyes darted towards the crown princess' face. The crown princess liked Yuxiang's frankness and straightforwardness. Moreover, giving a gift was a token of her sincerity. If the gift was too expensive, she wouldn't know what to do with it. Even though this potted plant only cost 2 taels of silver, it bought her life. This kindness was enough for her to remember for the rest of her life. She immediately smiled, "It's not you who got a great deal out of it. It's me who got a great deal out of it. In the future, if I get any new plants or seeds, I'll send them to you." Yuxiang secretly sighed in relief. She was about to refuse when the loud cries of a baby came from the compartment. Having just avoided death, the crown princess was at her most vulnerable and emotional state. She immediately had Song Mama bring the 2 children over. The little imperial grandson's facial features had already matured. His entire body was soft and tender like a lotus root. He looked extremely adorable. The crown princess held one child in each hand and cried out in her heart. When she thought about how she had almost been separated from her husband and children forever because of that scoundrel, she couldn't stop her tears from falling down. The 2 children seemed to feel something. Their cries gradually quieted down and they began to babble. Their chubby little hands gently patted their mother's face. "Your Highness, don't cry. The little imperial grandson is comforting you." Song Mama handed over a handkerchief. The crown princess returned the children to the wet nurse and took the handkerchief to wipe her tears. When she saw the ninth princess and Yuxiang staring unblinkingly at a pair of children, she couldn't help but ask with a smile, "Do you want to hold them? Let the wet nurse teach you how to hold children. You'll be old enough in 2 years." If it wasn't someone close to her, the crown princess definitely wouldn't tease them like this. However, Yuxiang and the ninth princess didn't blush at all. They both stretched out their hands and stared at the wet nurse. The wet nurse acted as if she was facing a great enemy. She carefully explained the correct way to hold children while carefully placing the little imperial grandson into their arms. When the children were tired from crying, they fell asleep with sparkling tears still stuck to the corners of their eyes. They smacked their little lips from time to time, making smacking sounds. Their adorable appearance was enough to melt one's heart. Yuxiang couldn't bear to let go once she held them. She lowered her head and used the tip of her nose to gently rub the little imperial grandson's chubby cheeks that still carried a milky fragrance. She kept calling out, "Darling." Just as she was about to take a few bites, she saw a tiny black thread coming out of the little imperial grandson's nostrils. She reached out to pinch it and asked in surprise, "Your Highness, why did the little imperial grandson breathe in a thread from his nostrils? Should we call an imperial physician over to take a look?" The ninth princess also said, "Little niece also has it in her nose." The crown princess and Nurse Song's faces turned pale as if they were struck by lightning. They froze for a moment. However, Yuxiang was even more shocked than the 2 of them. She had already twirled the thread between her index finger and thumb, and she found that the thread was wriggling slightly. The tip of the thread was even licking and sniffing at her fingertips, as if it was looking for a good place to bite. This wasn't a thread, it was a leech that was looking for a source of blood. Yuxiang wasn't afraid of anything, but the thing she was most afraid of in her 2 lifetimes was insects. She felt as if her soul and body had been separated. Her body was steady as she held the little imperial grandson. She calmly said, "Crown Princess, this doesn't seem to be a thread. It's a leech." A leech has crawled into the little imperial grandson's nostrils. However, her soul frantically scratched her hair and screamed, "This is a leech. How can a leech crawl into a person's body? It's too scary. Brother, come save me." When she thought that she would turn into a stone statue, Nurse Song used a needle to remove the leech from her fingertips and put it into a teacup. Then, she lifted her skirt and hurriedly ran out of the room, shouting all the way, "Imperial physician, where is the imperial physician? Hurry and find the imperial physician." The 9th princess didn't understand what was going on. The crown princess had already snatched the child into her arms and tightly wrapped him in a blanket. She broke down and cried loudly. The room was a mess for a moment. The crown prince hurried over. He first asked the 2 young maidservants to leave the room. Then, he ordered the imperial physician to carefully examine the children's bodies. He even moved the potted plant next to the children's heads. His expression alternated between benevolent and loving, and ferocious and terrifying. No one knew what he was thinking. The moment Yuxiang left the room, she had a palace maid bring her a basin of water. She forcefully rubbed her fingers. The sticky and slippery feeling of the worm wriggling on her fingertips couldn't be washed away. Her skin also had an inexplicable itch that she couldn't scratch. It burned her heart and lungs. The 9th princess guarded the door and refused to leave. The palace maid followed the crown prince's orders to take Miss Yu to the side hall to wait. However, Yuxiang didn't dare to stay in the fu for long. She kept feeling that there were worms crawling everywhere and that they were about to drill into her flesh. She ordered people to carry her out of the fu. Tao Hong, Lu, who was waiting at the door, hurriedly carried her into the carriage. Seeing that her body was constantly trembling, he covered her with a thin blanket. When Yu Pinyin boarded the carriage, she saw a young girl with disheveled hair and disheveled clothes. Because of the young girl's fright, she broke out in a cold sweat. The rich fragrance of flowers wafted out along with the lifted curtain of the carriage. It made her eyes hot and her heart beat faster, and her mouth dry. The author has something to say: "Thank you to my tycoon angels, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original version. Moi." Chapter 84. Yuxiang's entire body was itchy. As soon as she got on the carriage, she pulled off her hair tie, pulled open her clothes, and scratched her head, neck, and back. If there was a board of nails in front of her, she would immediately roll onto it. Her rich imagination magnified her fear of insects to the extreme. When she saw her brother lift the curtain, the tears that she had been holding back for a long time gushed out of her eyes. She called out weakly, "Brother, I'm itchy." Yu Pinyin immediately lowered the curtain and pulled her into his arms. He asked in a hoarse voice, "Where is it itchy? Brother will help you scratch it." "My back is itchy." Yuxiang pointed at her back. Yu Pinyin reached out to stroke her back and asked in a low voice, "Here. A little to the left. A little to the right. Up a little, down a little." Yuxiang randomly gave instructions, and the itch became more and more unbearable. She wanted to peel off her skin to see if there was a leech hiding underneath. Moreover, she recalled the time when Chang-Chi had covered her body with insects. Perhaps a few of them had entered her body through her ears, eyes, or nostrils, just like the little imperial grandson. As she thought about it, she clung tightly to her brother's neck, her body trembling uncontrollably. Yu Pinyin found it funny and pitiful at the same time. His large palm directly reached into her clothes and gently lifted her undergarments. His hand wandered around her smooth back, carefully caressing every inch of skin. The places where his large palm slid past no longer felt itchy, but numb and comfortable. Yu Xiang stopped trembling. She pulled up her sleeves to show her brother her goosebumps-covered arms. It's itchy here too. It's unbearably itchy all over. Brother, do you know? She leaned in very close and bit the youth's earlobe as she whispered. A leech came out of the little imperial grandson's nose. It was alive. I caught it with my own hands. She stretched out her right hand and shook it. Here, my hand is still numb. Yu Pinyin's other hand gently rubbed her arm. He untied his outer robe and pulled her into his embrace. He rubbed her up and down, then licked her fingertips. His tongue slid under her fingernails, taking away the numbness. His hoarse voice echoed in the car. Are you feeling better now? Yu Xiang suddenly felt her face turn red and her heart beat wildly. How could she have the mind to think about other things? She rubbed her fingertips that had been licked and nodded. After a moment of silence, she nodded again and then burrowed into her brother's robe. Yu Pinyin secretly took a deep breath. He couldn't resist the changes in his body, but he was afraid that the little girl would notice. He could only lean back and lie on his side, holding the little girl in his arms. He rubbed her head and said in a low voice, "It's late. Go to sleep." Yu Xiang nodded, her hands tightly clutching his lapel. The Lin clan immediately asked, "Yandere, did something happen to the crown princess? Why did you also call Xiang'er over in the middle of the night?" Yu Pinyin walked towards the west wing and said in a low voice, "What could happen to the crown princess? The crown princess has already recovered and will recover in less than 2 months. How did she recover? Didn't you say that she's not going to make it?" The Lin clan was greatly surprised. Yu Pinyin ignored them and quickly disappeared into the night. The old madam looked steadily at Yu Miaoqi and sneered, "Are you planning on becoming the crown prince's second consort? Why don't you check if you have that fate? Wan Qiu, help me back." Wan Qiu complied and helped her back to her room. Yu Miaoqi obediently sent them off. When they were far away, she revealed a malicious expression and murmured, "I'm a born noble, why don't I have that fate?" The Lin clan saw that their daughter was unwilling and asked worriedly, "Cheer, could it be that you still want to become the crown prince's concubine? Being the crown prince's second consort is different from being a concubine in other families. When the crown prince ascends the throne, I will be the imperial concubine. How can any noble lady in the capital hope to reach me? Mother, I've made up my mind. I want to marry the crown prince." Yu Miaoqi's tone was slow but firm. The Lin clan opened their mouths and sighed helplessly. If it was only the crown princess who was killed, then this matter could only be a fight within the inner chambers. Thus, the crown prince didn't dare to rashly report it to his imperial father. However, it involved the young imperial grandson's life, so the crown prince didn't dare to be careless. When the palace doors opened, he knelt outside Yangxin Palace Hall. Emperor Cheng Kong was an emperor with a strong desire for control. Otherwise, he wouldn't have set up the Dragon Scale Guard to supervise all the officials. Not only did he set down the government decrees during his reign, he also set down the policy of governing the Great Han Kingdom for 100 years after his death. The crown prince was the only prince who could strictly carry out his political ambitions. Unless the crown prince disappointed him to the point that he couldn't tolerate it, or died early, he wouldn't consider the other princes. Right now, the crown prince had given birth to a legitimate son, and he was in the prime of his life. If the crown prince died early, it would be the same for him to raise another imperial grandson. When he was old, the imperial grandson would be at his most energetic and ambitious age. Wouldn't that be perfect? Thus, the position of the crown prince's family in Emperor Chengkang's heart couldn't be replaced by any other prince. As for the ambitious princes, their jealousy and hatred towards the crown prince had reached an immeasurable level. The murder of the crown princess and the imperial grandson was most likely due to internal strife, and it was even more likely to be the work of the other princes. When the news reached Emperor Chengkang's ears, he flipped the imperial table on the spot and flew into a rage. He roared and ordered Yupinyan to investigate to the end. He had heard of all kinds of methods used to harm people, and had seen even more. However, this method really touched his originally tenacious nerves. Think about it, that leech wasn't anything rare. As long as one had the heart to find it, almost everyone could find it. Just put it in your eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, and you would die without anyone knowing. Not only did it suck your blood, but it also scuttled through your blood vessels, skin, and flesh, and finally gnawed on your brain. Just thinking about this scene made one's hair stand on end. Not only was this method insidious, it was also very disgusting. A layer of goosebumps appeared all over the emperor's body. He quickly ordered the crown prince to bring the insect bites into the palace and let him and the palace concubines take turns smelling it. The crown prince didn't dare to disobey and immediately ordered someone to bring it. He thought that he would find another bag of seeds and have Xiang'e help him plant another pot. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to sleep at night. Yu Xiang was still lazing in bed until late in the morning. If it weren't for the people from the palace coming to announce the decree, she would have lain in bed for another 4 hours. Emperor Chengkang's chief eunuch personally announced the decree. After praising Miss Three, he rewarded her with many treasures and conferred her the title of Lord of the Rural Lands. Then, he picked and chose from Miss Three's courtyard and pulled a cart full of exotic flowers and herbs back. Immediately after, the crown prince and the crown princess's family sent people to express their thanks. The carriages carrying the gifts came and went in an endless stream. Lord of the Rural Lands was a rank that only the daughters of Zhenghua Duke and Fugua Duke were qualified to hold. Furthermore, the emperor had personally conferred the title. Their status was above all the other lords. Although they couldn't compare to the imperial clan's daughters, they were the first among the noble daughters with different surnames. After receiving the imperial decree, Yu Xiang didn't feel anything. She ate and slept as usual. However, the Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi almost fainted from anger. They originally thought that she had something to do with the crown princess' illness and that she would be in big trouble. Who would have thought that the crown princess would recover overnight and she would even be conferred the title of Lord of the Rural Lands? What exactly was the mystery behind this? The Lin clan couldn't guess, so they didn't bother. After receiving the decree, they rubbed their temples and walked back. Yu Miaoqi stopped the matriarch and asked in a low voice, "Grandmother, younger sister being conferred the title of Lord of the Rural Lands is a joyous occasion. However, you also know what her original identity was. If it was exposed one day, wouldn't our family have committed the crime of deceiving the monarch? How can a small merchant's daughter be worthy of the title of Lord of the Rural Lands?" The matriarch looked at her with dark eyes for a while and sneered, "If Xiang'e isn't worthy, do you think you are? Don't forget, you grew up in a small family Shen until you were 10 years old." She didn't expose the fact that the Celestial Empress already knew about Xiang'e's identity. Instead, she warned, "Since you know the severity of this matter, you and your mother should keep your mouths shut." With that, she walked away. Yu Miaoqi chased after her and hurriedly said, "Mother and I naturally won't speak carelessly. However, there's still the Zhao clan, Yu Siyu, and my former older brother. It's hard to say if they'll be able to keep their mouths shut." Was she planning to use the Marquis household's power to eliminate the source of the problem? She didn't leave any leeway for others. The matriarch turned back to look at her intently. In the end, she shook her head and left, leaving Yu Miaoqi standing in the same spot, gnashing her teeth in hatred. In order to investigate the crown prince mansion, Yu Pinyin didn't return home for 3 consecutive days. When she stepped into the house today, she saw the matriarch tossing a clean robe over and urging her, "Hurry and wash up. We're going to the Chang clan's banquet." Chang Yafu removed his clothes today. "What does her removal have to do with me?" Yu Pinyin raised her brows. "You don't want to break off the engagement, do you?" The matriarch glared at her unhappily. Chapter 85. Ever since the audit of the accounts, the Lin clan didn't dare to provoke the matriarch. They relayed the words of the Chang clan's mother and daughter and probed a bit. Seeing that the matriarch insisted on canceling the engagement, they dropped the matter. Fortunately, the matriarch was a kind person. She didn't plan on canceling the engagement on the day of her wedding, but instead set it for half a month later. She also let the Chang clan speak first, which could be considered as saving the last bit of face between the two clans. The family had prepared a few presentable gifts and arrived in a carriage for a visit. Duke Jinghua and his wife personally ran to the main gate to welcome them, their attitudes very attentive. Yu Xiang and Chang Yafu had always been filthy. When they met, they didn't see eye to eye. They curled their lips and snorted as a greeting. When they saw Chang Qi, they waved their horsewhip with murderous intent in their eyes. Duke Jinghua had already asked the emperor to grant Chang Qi the title of heir apparent, but the imperial edict hadn't been issued yet, so he was still a virgin. Although Chang Yafu was the daughter of a duke, she didn't belong to the 8th rank and didn't have the title of village lord. As a result, among the noble ladies present, Yu Xiang's status was the highest. In addition to her arrogant and domineering reputation, no one dared to provoke her. Yu Xiang was also happy and relaxed. Seeing that the sun was just right today, she took a bag of fish food and went to the back garden to feed the fishes. Several burly women stood guard around her, not allowing anyone to easily approach her. Chang Yafu ordered people to keep an eye on her. Seeing that she didn't move for a long time, she excused herself by saying that she wasn't feeling well and left first. In the front courtyard, Duke Jinghua placed food and wine on the table to apologize to Yu Pinyin. From his croaking to his high position, his words were full of guilt and regret, and he repeatedly urged her to drink. Yu Pinyin usually didn't get drunk even after 1,000 cups. She only drank with a cold face and didn't reply, making Duke Jinghua feel very awkward. He said all the good things he had prepared, but the other party didn't seem to be moved in the slightest. Duke Jinghua's eyes darkened. Right at this moment, Duke Jinghua's wife's personal maidservant ran in and hurriedly said, "Master Ho, it's not good. Miss 3 was feeding the fishes by the pond and somehow fell into the water. Although he has been rescued, he is still unconscious. My family's madam asks you to hurry over and take a look." Yu Pinyin threw down his wine cup with a bang, flicked his sleeves, and left. When he arrived at the side room in the rear courtyard, he saw Duchess Jinghua standing at the door with a panicked expression. He thought that the elder ancestor and the members of the Lin clan were all in the room, so he pushed the door open and entered without thinking. There was no trace of the elder ancestor and the others in the room. There was a lotus fragrance in the air, but it was not as pure as it usually was. A wheelchair was placed beside the bed, and behind the layers of gauze curtains, a slight bulge could be faintly seen. Yu Pinyin's anxious mood instantly calmed down. He slowly walked over and lifted the gauze curtain. He saw Chang Yafu shyly looking at him with the blanket wrapped around him. His brows were filled with boundless shyness. She called out "Yi Feng" in a low voice. Then, she sat up and slowly took off the crimson quilt. Yu Pinyin maintained his posture of lifting the gauze curtain. He raised one eyebrow and stared at her. His pitch-black eyes did not contain the slightest ripple. Chang Yafu was only wearing a crimson dudu and thin, transparent bloomers. Her entire body was suffused with a faint pink from embarrassment. Coupled with her graceful figure and fair skin, she looked as alluring as a demoness at first glance. She crossed her arms and waited, but when she saw that Yu Pinyin was only staring at her without moving, she could only take the initiative to lean over and wrap her arms around his thin waist. Using a coaxing tone, she said, "Feng, I was wrong. I'll give you whatever you want. Can you forgive me just this once? I think about you day and night. My heart is filled with pain and regret. I'm miserable beyond words. Feng, I beg you not to abandon me. Otherwise, I'll die." There was no doubt that this was the honey trap that the Chang clan's mother and daughter had thought about for half a month before coming up with. Yu Pinyin was a military commander. What kind of sneaky tricks had he not seen before? Getting him drunk would not work. Drugging him was tantamount to suicide. Only by openly seducing him would there be a bit of hope. He was a hot-blooded young man. He did not have any concubines or tongfang by his side. Normally, he had never flirted with women. He had suppressed his feelings until he was 21 or 22 years old. Suddenly, he saw a perfect woman's body. Moreover, the other party was a woman that he had long been engaged to. Who could resist this kind of temptation? As long as Yu Pinyin was still a man, there was no reason for him not to take action. As long as he took action, he would have no choice but to accept this engagement. However, there was always a gap between imagination and reality. Chang Yafu endured the shame and hugged Yu Pinyin for a long time, but he did not move at all. She could only raise her head to look. However, she saw that Yu Pinyin's long and narrow eyes were filled with ridicule and disdain. The corners of his mouth were raised in an evil smile, as if he was admiring a clown. Her sense of shame soared to the extreme and turned into anger. Chang Yafu decisively untied the belt around her neck and tore off the last piece of cloth covering her private parts. Then, she boldly reached for the man's crotch. She did not believe that Yu Pinyin would be able to hold himself back after she had done this. Yu Pinyin finally moved. However, he did not hug Chang Yafu and roll onto the bed. Instead, he grabbed her wrist and sneered in a low voice, "Chang Yafu, you've really opened this marquis' eyes. Don't talk about taking off your clothes to seduce me. Even if you took the initiative to spread your legs and beg for pleasure, this marquis would not want you." Chang Yafu was stunned. For a moment, she did not know how to react. Outside the door, Duchess Jinghua led the matriarch and Yu Xiang over in a hurry. She insisted on letting the family Yu see the sin they had committed with their own eyes. Then, she would grandly hold the two children's wedding. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Yu Pinyin reached out to push Chang Yafu away. Who would have thought that she would suddenly jump on top of him as if she had gone crazy? Her arms tightened around his neck and her legs coiled around his waist. He could not tear her away no matter how hard he tried. The main door opened with a clang. Because it was premeditated, the screen in the room had already been torn off. Everyone's eyes immediately focused on the two entangled people. Duchess Jinghua and her eldest daughter pretended to cry out in surprise. Then, they closed the door behind them, locking everyone inside the room and not letting them out. It was as if they were going to settle accounts at an opportune time. The matriarch was so angry that she couldn't speak. The hand holding the walking stick trembled. The members of the Lin clan and Yu Miaoqi hurriedly stepped forward to support her. They were afraid that she would faint from the shock. Their lowered eyelids concealed the gloating expression in their eyes. This Chang Yafu was also a ruthless person. In order to trap Yu Pinyin, he was willing to use himself as bait. Now that he had seen everything that he should have seen and what he shouldn't have seen, for the sake of both families' reputations, Yu Pinyin had to take responsibility no matter how unwilling he was. Because the servants and biddies had already been dismissed by Duchess Jinghua, Yu Xiang looked towards Yu Miaoqi with an extremely gloomy expression. She ordered, "Push me over." Yu Miaoqi stared blankly, then immediately let go of the matriarch to push her. She wanted to see what exactly she wanted to do. Yu Pinyin was still tearing at Chang Yafu, but Chang Yafu's chest was bare. If she pulled it off, wouldn't everyone see it? In order to preserve her last bit of face, she steeled her heart and refused to come down. As the two struggled, Yu Pinyin's neat clothes were completely disheveled. It really did look like they had a head and a tail. Yu Xiang was pushed to the front of the bed. She raised her horsewhip and lashed out at Chang Yafu's buttocks. She didn't stop even after 5 or 6 lashes. The muffled sounds of leather hitting buttocks reverberated through the air. It was enough to make one's teeth hurt. Chang Yafu couldn't take it anymore. He cried out in pain as he let go of his arms and legs and climbed onto the bed to avoid being whipped. Yu Xiang picked up the thin quilt that had fallen to the ground and threw it at her. Her bright eyes burned with flames of anger. She then pulled her brother behind her and glared at him fiercely. Yu Pinyin gave her a faint smile and unhurriedly straightened her clothes. Duke Jingwa's wife and eldest daughter rushed to the bed to check on Chang Yafu's injuries. When they saw that she was tightly wrapped in a brocade quilt and refused to show her face, they could only turn to look at the matriarch, who had already calmed down, and ask, "The old lady, what do you think we should do about this? Our foal was bullied by Yandere like this. We should at least give an explanation, right?" How could the matriarch not see that this was a trap set up by the mother and daughter pair of the Chang family? However, Yandere really did ruin their reputation. Moreover, the eldest daughter of the Chang family was married to the imperial censor of the left, Jiang Darren. He was also a powerful witness. If she didn't welcome Chang Yafu into the family, she didn't know what kind of trouble the Chang family would stir up. After thinking it over, the matriarch could only grit her teeth and swallow her blood. She nodded and said, "Then let's quickly arrange their wedding." When they heard this, not only did the mother and daughter pair of the Chang family smile, even the mother and daughter pair of the Lin clan revealed happy expressions. Chang Yafu clearly didn't see eye to eye with the matriarch and Yu Xiang. Once she entered the prefecture Yu household, she would be their support. In addition, Yu Pinyin was at the age where he was hot-blooded and vigorous, so he would always treat his first woman a little differently. As such, there was a high chance that they could win him over. Yu Pinyin, who was at the center of everyone's calculations, still had a leisurely expression. He bent over and stared at his younger sister's gloomy face. Yu Xiang pushed away his handsome face that was inching closer and closer. She sneered, "This wedding can't be held. Marriage is decided by the parents and the matchmaker's words. Right now, all the elders are present, and the betrothal gifts and marriage certificates are complete. How can it not be held?" Duke Jingwa's wife's tone was mocking. "Xianger, you should also learn the rules. How can an unmarried woman like you have the right to butt in on this kind of matter?" Yu Xiang used her horsewhip to whip the bedding, her voice sinister. "You're telling me to learn the rules? You have the nerve to say such a thing?" What kind of unmarried woman would privately lead a man to her room and openly strip naked for him to see? Is this your Chang family's rule? It's truly an eye-opener. Madame Chang was so angry that she couldn't speak. The eldest daughter, Chang Yiting, didn't know how to refute. Today's matter was indeed a trap they had set up. They had sacrificed Chang Yafu's reputation in order to ensnare Yu Pinyin. Otherwise, who would Chang Yafu marry in this lifetime? Who would dare to marry a woman that the king of hell didn't want? Since her reputation had already been destroyed, it was truly laughable to use the rules to talk about this matter. Yu Xiang whipped the bedding until it split open before coldly saying, "Chang Yafu's conduct has never been good. She even had a relationship with Yu Pinhong before. Now, she even took the initiative to strip and seduce someone. Her behavior is truly too wanton. I suspect that her body is no longer clean. This marriage can't be held. What do you take my older brother for? A turtle son of a bitch who picks up used shoes and wears a green hat. The Chang family's mother and daughter were so angry that smoke came out of their heads. Chang Yafu curled up into a small ball and squeezed into the corner of the bed, as if he had no face to see anyone. Yu Pinyin, on the other hand, laughed quietly. Yu Xiang turned around and fiercely glared at him. The matriarch's gloomy eyes revealed a trace of shrewdness. She nodded in agreement. Xiang'er is right. My family, you won't tolerate an unchaste woman entering the family. Chapter 86. The Chang family was using this method to make the Yu family acknowledge the debt. If they really invited the wet nurse to examine Chang Yafu's body, then if she was still a virgin, the Yu family would definitely have to take responsibility for her humiliation. Just as the old madam was hesitating, Yu Xiang sneered. Her beautiful face was full of arrogance. So what if we invite the wet nurse to examine her? If she's not a virgin, our family you won't want her. If she's still a virgin, then it's even worse. Imagine a girl who had yet to be married being able to hover between two men and play them around. When the boat was flipped, she would even throw away her last bit of dignity and take the initiative to take off her clothes and beg for pleasure. She's not even married and she's already such a lewd woman. Won't she stir up a foul atmosphere in my Yu family once she marries into the family? Our family Yu isn't a brothel. We won't accept a slut. You're going too far. Madame Chang choked out after holding back for a long time. Then, she desperately massaged her aching chest. Chang Yafu and Chang Yating were no match for Yu Xiang. They were so embarrassed by her venomous words that they wanted to die. Their eyes turned red. If you dare to do something, then you have to admit it. If you're a slut, then don't even think about building a monument to your chastity. We won't acknowledge this marriage. Yu Xiang continued, you want to stuff a pastry covered in feces into our mouths, and you expect us to swallow it without hesitation. Do you think our family Yu is full of idiots? Chang Yating, you're the wife of the imperial censor of the left, but you don't even know the most basic etiquette. Do you believe that I won't spread the news of Chang Yafu taking off her clothes to seduce men? Then your reputation will be ruined as well. If you want to save face, then hurry up and cancel the marriage. The old madam slowly opened her mouth. That's right. If your Chang family still wants to save face, then come to Prefecture Yu in 7 days to cancel the marriage. Xiang'er, let's go. Yu Xiang nodded in agreement. Yu Pinyin immediately pushed her out. Unexpectedly, she pinched the back of her hand fiercely, but there was no pain on her face. Instead, she was full of joy. When everyone was gone, Chang Yafu poked his head out of the quilt and burst into tears. Madame Chang and Chang Yating were also on the verge of collapse from Yu Xiang's scolding. If this trick was used on other families, that family would have to admit defeat. However, the family Yu was powerful and shameless. And Chang Yafu's misdeeds. Chang Yafu's misdeeds. If this matter was blown out of proportion, the reputation of the eldest daughter of the first wife who was married off would also be swept to the ground. It was really like lifting a rock and smashing one's own foot. She was the most shameless person in the Yu clan who used her power to bully others. If she hadn't suddenly spoken up, the old lady would have already agreed. The Chang family's mother and daughter immediately hated Yu Xiang to the bone. The matriarch walked out of Prefecture Yu's gate. She rubbed the top of her granddaughter's head and proudly praised, Xiang'er did well. This family is too shameless. Yu Xiang pursed her lips and nodded. She was still unhappy. When Yu Pinyin carried her into the carriage, she whipped him a few times. He could only hold her arms and beg for mercy in a low voice. The Lin clan's mother and daughter fell into the back carriage. They looked at each other and sighed. Yu Xiang's mouth was really poisonous. She said lewd children, sluts, pastries covered in feces. She almost cursed that family to death on the spot. It really took courage to be her enemy. The Lin clan sighed inwardly. Yu Miaoqi sneered, the Chang family is still a bit shameless. If the other family's womenfolk can also be witnesses, Yu Xiang won't be able to get away with it no matter how eloquent her mouth is. Moreover, Chang Yafu is already engaged to Yu Pinyin. Even if her reputation is damaged, the extent of the damage is limited. When she becomes Madame Yu in the future, who can say that she's fooling around? She lost today because she's not shameless enough. The Lin clan's mother nodded after a moment of silence. Yu Miaoqi suddenly remembered Yu Xiang's evaluation of her, shameless people are invincible. Her expression immediately turned ugly. Yu Pinyin pushed his sister back to the west wing and automatically brought a basin of hot water for her to wash her face. Yu Xiang tested the temperature of the water and was stunned for a moment. She then raised her hand and poured the entire basin of water on him. Seeing this, Lulu hurriedly pulled the panicked Tao Hong out. Yu Pinyin wiped away the water droplets on his face and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong now? You're still so angry even after I coaxed you all the way here. It's obvious that older brother dotes on you too much and spoils you to the point of being undisciplined and out of control." "Yes, I have a bad temper and I'm undisciplined and out of control. I can't compare to your gentlemanly love for the fairer sex. She's already thrown herself into your arms, yet you still refuse to let go, afraid that you'll drop her." Yu Xiang questioned with reddened eyes, "If I didn't stop you, would you have married her today?" Yu Pinyin forcefully suppressed his laughter and pulled her into his arms. Both of them lay down on the couch and used his dripping chin to rub against her fair and delicate neck. He said softly, "Why would I marry her? Aren't I waiting for Xiang'er to come in and save me? In the future, older brother's chastity will depend on Xiang'er to protect it." Yu Xiang was silent for a moment and said in a muffled voice, "You were hugged by her for so long. What chastity do you have left? You're so dirty. Hurry and go wash up." After saying this, she poked her brother's hard chest. Yu Pinyin held her fingertips and buried his face in her cheek. After taking a few deep breaths, he shouted, "Bring a bucket of water in." Tao Hong hurriedly called for someone to bring water. Lulu stood at the door for a long time before she finally entered the room step by step. However, she saw that Master Ho had already gone behind the screen. White mist filled the room and there were a few pieces of dirty clothes on the ground. "Miss, Master Ho is taking a bath here. Do you want to leave for a moment?" She swallowed and asked hesitantly. "Leave for what?" Yu Xiang was deep in thought and didn't even raise her head as she said, "Isn't there a screen there? Where else can I go?" Lulu was speechless for a long time. She stood there blankly for a moment and could only bend down to pick up the clothes on the ground. She was about to take them to wash when she unexpectedly heard her master coldly order, "No need to wash them. Hurry and burn them." "Ah. You just asked the embroiderer to make this set of clothes for Master Ho. He's only wearing it this time." Lulu hesitated. "I told you to burn them. Why are you being so long-winded?" Yu Xiang impatiently glared at her. Lulu had no choice but to roll the clothes into a ball and take it outside to burn. Before she left, she seemed to hear Master Ho's low laughter from behind the screen. After everyone left, Yu Xiang revealed an angry expression. Only the heavens knew that when she saw her brother and Chang Yafu hugging each other without clothes covering their bodies, she couldn't wait to use a rope to hang them upside down and whip them. However, after she poured the warm water on her brother, she began to feel uneasy. Perhaps her emotions were a bit too extreme. Perhaps her actions would make her brother unhappy. After all, he was already 21 or 22 years old. It was understandable for him to fantasize about women. There was a sharp pain in her heart. Yu Xiang's absent-minded eyes slowly darkened, time passed by as her imagination ran wild. Yu Pinyin walked out with his wet hair draped over his shoulders. He saw his little sister's legs covered in a thick cotton cloth. She waved at him. "Brother, come here quickly. I'll help you dry your hair." The two of them had done this countless times. Naturally, they were incomparably familiar with it. Yu Pinyin obeyed and lay on his little sister's legs. The white cotton cloth wrapped around his hair. A small hand would occasionally gently rub through the cloth, and occasionally insert into his hair and slowly stroke it. A warm and pleasant feeling quietly crept into his heart. Yu Xiang's face had long since lost its previous anger. Instead, it was filled with a sweet smile. She whispered, "Brother, I didn't deliberately throw a tantrum at you today. I was truly shocked by the shamelessness of the Chang family's mother and daughter. Fortunately, although they're shameless, they're not shameless enough. Otherwise, if they called all the women who came to the banquet as witnesses, you wouldn't be able to clear your name even if you had 100 mouths. Could it be that you're really willing to marry that indecent woman, Chang Yafu?" Her sweet voice unconsciously carried a trace of resentment. Yu Pinyin closed his eyes slightly and smiled. How could that be? Even if they're thick-skinned enough, brother still has a way to make them voluntarily break off the engagement. "Xiang'er, don't worry. Brother will marry anyone but Chang Yafu." As he spoke, he grabbed his little sister's small hand that was stroking his hair and gently squeezed it. Yu Xiang inwardly sighed in relief and smiled. That's good. A real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife. Without Chang Yafu, we can slowly look for someone. It's best to find someone who will be devoted to brother. Yu Pinyin raised his eyes and glanced at her. He casually said, "Devoted? Any random person in the capital can be devoted to me. Which woman doesn't regard her husband as her everything after marriage?" These words sounded as if he was extremely anxious about marrying a wife. Yu Xiang's sensitive nerves were pricked. She forcefully grabbed her brother's hair with one hand and wrapped her other hand around his neck, tightening her grip. She lowered her small face and pressed the tip of her nose against her brother's as she sneered, "Any random person? Can you find a wife so casually? If you're really anxious, I'll have the old ancestor marry 8 or 10 women into the family tomorrow. I'll have them hover around you all day and fight over you like a piece of juicy meat. They'll drug this one and poison that one. In order to give birth to a little heir as soon as possible, they'll hastily burrow into your bedding and squeeze you dry. They'll even stuff bugs into your nostrils." As she spoke, she released the strands of hair in her hand and pulled her brother's face instead. She bared her small white teeth and threatened him. Yu Pinyin was breathless from being strangled by her, but he couldn't stop chuckling. He begged for mercy. "Xiang'er, hurry and let go. Brother is just joking with you. Without your consent, brother won't marry anyone." "Really?" Yu Xiang poked his high nose with the tip of her finger. "Of course it's true. What 8 or 10? Brother already has trouble dealing with one of you. How would I have the heart to deal with 8 or 10? Good Xiang'er, hurry and let go of brother." Yu Pinyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he tried to pry his sister's arm away. Yu Xiang stared at him for a while before letting go of his neck. She broke into a smile. "That's a good boy. We're not in a hurry to get married. Let's take our time to find a wife. It would be best if they could find a wife for 8 or 10 years. As she thought of this, Yu Xiang's large eyes narrowed. She smiled slyly and pouted her lips as she forcefully kissed her brother's forehead. Yu Pinyin's breathing stopped slightly. He tapped his left cheek and coaxed, "Here too." With a crisp smack, he tapped his right cheek again. Yu Xiang giggled. After generously kissing his cheek, she kissed his eyes, then the bridge of his nose, his chin, and the corner of his mouth. She didn't stop until his entire face was wet with kisses. Yu Pinyin's chest heaved. He couldn't suppress the tenderness in his heart. He wrapped his arms around her neck and pulled her into his embrace. He carefully rubbed and caressed her and kissed her intensely. Lulu stood guard at the door of the room. His face was deathly pale and his forehead was dark. He glanced at Tao Hong, who was leisurely eating melon seeds, and asked in a low voice, "Don't you think that Miss and Master Ho are too close? If Miss isn't close to Master Ho, would she be close to you?" Tao Hong spat out a melon seed shell. After a moment of silence, Lulu said, "But she can't always rely on Master Ho. If she's not relying on Master Ho, then should she rely on you?" Lulu facepalmed. "That's not what I meant. What I meant was, how can Master Ho hug Miss all day? If Master Ho doesn't hug her, then should those old women who are like mud balls hug her? Aya, it hurts my eyes." Tao Hong hurriedly covered his eyes with his hands as if he was disgusted by the scene. Chapter 87. The Chung family suffered a loss and automatically came to cancel the engagement 3 days later. They also returned the gifts they had given during the engagement. Their attitude could be considered sincere. The matriarch gladly accepted them and told them not to mention the past again. When the mother and daughter of the Chung family saw that the prefecture Yu had no intention of making things difficult for them, the large stone hanging in their hearts finally fell to the ground. After another half a month, the matriarch heard that the Purple Direction Pavilion had received a new batch of exotic seafood. Among them was a kind of bright mirror that could reflect a person's figure down to the tiniest detail. She guessed that her granddaughter, who loved beauty, would definitely like it, so she had her granddaughter accompany her to choose. Yu Xiang knew that it was a mercury mirror and readily agreed. When she left the courtyard, she saw that the mother and daughter of the Lin clan were also following closely behind her. Her good mood instantly dropped by half. The group arrived at the Purple Direction Pavilion in 2 separate carriages. The womenfolk of each family who had also received the news also hurried over. The carriages were packed to the brim and parked in a row. Although the family Yu was only a second-rank noble, Yu Pinyin was one of the most influential people in the capital. The shopkeeper didn't dare to be negligent and sent several shop assistants to entertain them. Western taffeta, lace cloth, clocks, music boxes, mercury mirrors, and other items were placed in the most conspicuous places in the shop. Anyone who came would rush over to take a look and touch them. Yu Xiang saw that there were many people there, so she asked Tao Hong to push her behind a few antique shelves to choose some exquisite small items. A colorful opal necklace attracted her attention. Just as she was about to reach out to take it, someone grabbed it first. Yu Xiang glared angrily and immediately exclaimed, "Your Highness the Crown Prince." The Crown Prince's eyes were full of smiles as he gestured for her to keep quiet. Yu Xiang immediately covered her gaping mouth with her small hand. "You like this necklace?" the Crown Prince asked in a low voice. Yu Xiang nodded honestly. "If that's the case, I'll give it to you. What else do you want? I'll pay for it." The Crown Prince waved his sleeve generously. Yu Xiang didn't know how to write the word courteous at all. His fingertips tapped repeatedly, "Thank you, Your Highness. I want this string of beads, this dressing box, this tortoiseshell comb, this." In one breath, he picked 7 or 8 things and ordered Tao Hong, Lulu, to hold them in his arms. The Crown Prince liked her straightforwardness and asked her several times if she wanted more. It's hard to refuse such kindness. Then let's add another mercury mirror. I want the biggest one, the kind that can reflect everything from head to toe. There were so many noble ladies here today. If they wanted to snatch a mirror, they would have to rely on the Crown Prince. Yu Xiang stretched out his arms and gestured a huge outline. The Crown Prince was amused by her and couldn't stop laughing. He ordered the eunuch next to him to negotiate with the shopkeeper. The two of them chatted for a while. When the young eunuch came back to report that the matter had been settled, Wuxia left in satisfaction. Before he left, he made a gesture of silence, indicating that he would never reveal the whereabouts of His Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince smiled and waved his hand. Wuxia came out from behind the antique shelves and had Tao Hong and Lulu push her in front of the mercury mirror with the most people. She wanted to see if the surface of the mirror was smooth. Not long after she left, half a face with a strange smile poked out from behind another antique shelf. It was Yumiaochi, who had been hiding for an unknown amount of time. His Highness the Crown Prince. She silently chewed on these 4 words. She gathered the hair by her cheek and smoothed out the creases on her lapel and skirt. She pretended to casually walk toward the Crown Prince's hiding place. Today, the Crown Prince was wearing a brocade robe with dark patterns. His black hair was tied up behind his head with a white jade hairpin. His tall and straight figure stood in the bright golden halo, appearing very handsome and imposing. Yumiaochi's heart fiercely trembled. She immediately withdrew her infatuated gaze and reached out with her white fingertips to touch a blue and white porcelain vase. The smile on her face was gentle and elegant, tranquil and moving. When the Crown Prince heard the sound of footsteps, he raised his eyes and saw that the other party was only a weak woman. He didn't open his mouth to scold her. Instead, he picked up a palm-sized copper cauldron and examined it against the sunlight to see if it was real or fake. "What era did you say this copper item is from? Is it real or fake?" he asked the young eunuch beside him. "Your Highness, young master, this servant's knowledge is shallow and really can't tell." The young eunuch shook his head with a bitter expression. He then pointed upstairs and said, "How about this servant call the shopkeeper down to help you take a look? He naturally wants to sell this copper cauldron. How can we believe the truth from his mouth?" The Crown Prince sneered. The young eunuch said respectfully, "What kind of person is young master? Even if he deceived anyone, he wouldn't dare to deceive you. Young master, please wait a moment. This servant will go call the shopkeeper." Seeing that his master didn't stop him, the young eunuch lifted his feet to leave. However, he heard a clear and melodious voice ring out. "This copper cauldron is real." Moreover, it was used by the imperial court during the Xia dynasty. If young master is interested, the price should be around 5,000 taels of silver. The Crown Prince raised his eyebrows and looked at the beautiful woman who was slowly walking over. He had an expression that said he wanted to hear more about it. The family Shen originally started their business by raiding tombs. For generations, their ancestors had dealt with funerary objects. When it came to appraising antiques, Yumiaochi could be called a master. She had almost never made a mistake. She walked forward confidently and naturally took the copper cauldron from the Crown Prince's hands. She pointed at the patterns on the cauldron and slowly explained. She cited classics, and her calm posture and profound knowledge attracted the Crown Prince's attention. He didn't hide the admiration in his eyes. After she finished appraising the copper cauldron, the Crown Prince was completely convinced. He picked up an ancient painting and admired it with Yumiaochi. The two whispered and talked happily. The atmosphere was very harmonious. On the other side, Wuxia had already arrived in front of the mercury mirror. She used her horsewhip to line up a few coquettish noble ladies and occupy the most central position. Because her actions were really rude and overbearing, the noble ladies glared at her angrily. They wanted to open their mouths and curse her, but they were quickly pulled away by the people beside them. They whispered, "Forget it, don't quarrel with her. Even your future sister-in-law was scolded by her to the point of committing suicide and taking the initiative to break off the engagement. How can you be her opponent? If you can't win, she will raise her hand and whip you a few times. You won't even have a place to cry. Commandant Yu doesn't care who's right or wrong. She will protect her all the way. Forget it, forget it." Stay away from her. The noble ladies' faces constantly changed between red and white. In the end, they were intimidated by Yu Xiang's poisonous tongue and the power of the Marquis family. They reluctantly walked away. Yu Xiang heard all the gossip. How could she let them leave? She held her horsewhip horizontally and coldly said, "Stop. Tell me clearly. What do you mean my future sister-in-law was scolded by me to the point of committing suicide and taking the initiative to break off the engagement? Where did you hear this from? Where do we even need to ask? It's already spread throughout the capital. Everyone is talking about it." One of the noble ladies sneered. Yu Xiang's eyes gradually turned cold. Her hand holding the horsewhip suddenly itched. She cursed inwardly, "Yu Chang Yafu. You broke off the engagement and now you're using me as a stepping stone. You're very good." Just as she was thinking about how to respond, she saw a woman with a sinister expression rush into the purple direction pavilion. She fiercely smashed the rotten egg in her hand on Yu Xiang's face and cursed, "Prefecture Yu's bastard, go to hell. Yu Pinyin is a heartless and ambitious official. He actually wants to cover the sky with one hand in the capital. Not only does he indiscriminately kill the innocent, but he also harms the loyal. Sooner or later, he will suffer retribution. Today, I will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and perish together with a vile spawn like you." As she shouted, she stretched out her hands and pretended to strangle Yu Xiang. Her eyes had already turned blood red. It was obvious that she had already entered a demonic state. Wherever she passed, people would retreat and scream in fear. However, Yu Xiang didn't show the slightest fear. She used a handkerchief to wipe the egg on her cheeks and waved her hand, "Catch this crazy woman for me." Prefecture Yu's maidservants were different from other residences. They more or less knew how to fight. At this time, they swarmed forward and restrained the woman in a few breaths. The woman frantically struggled and cursed loudly, attracting everyone's attention. Behind the ancient bookshelf, Yu Miaoqi saw that the crown prince didn't ask about her origins. She was secretly anxious. When she heard the commotion, she tiptoed to take a look. She immediately came up with an idea and pretended to anxiously bid farewell to the crown prince. "Young master, my younger sister seems to have encountered some trouble. This little girl needs to go and help, so I'll leave first." These words first hinted at her identity, then used Yu Xiang's difficult situation to set off her elegance. If she could smoothly resolve this matter, she could also show off her ability. It could be said that she was killing two birds with one stone. Her footsteps were disorderly and her breathing was rapid. It was as if she was very worried about Yu Xiang's safety. When the crown prince saw that Yu Xiang was being blamed, he immediately followed her out. However, he didn't go forward to help. Instead, he clasped his hands behind his back and watched. He knew exactly how capable Yu Xiang was. A mere crazy woman couldn't do anything to her. Moreover, he also knew that woman. She was Su Fei's sister-in-law. Just as the crown prince predicted, the leeches in the nostrils of the crown princess and the children were put there by Su Fei. Her goal was to make her son the legitimate son. Because the Su family had been relying on military power for the past few years and the Empress Dowager wanted to control the court, Emperor Qing Kong couldn't bear it anymore. He used this matter to severely punish the Su family. As the commander of the 9 gates, Su Mao was executed by Yu Pinyin. Because the Empress Dowager begged for mercy, the Su family's womenfolk were spared from death. However, their family property was confiscated and their lives were difficult. The main culprit, Su Fei, was given a cup of poisoned wine by Emperor Qing Kong. It was announced that she had died of a sudden illness. The reason why Su Fei was able to think of such a vicious plan was because she happened to hear a little girl talk about a rural legend. Before Su Fei had any wild thoughts, the little girl had already died of illness. She was also an orphan. Her background was not suspicious. All of these situations seemed very coincidental, but the Crown Prince and Yupinian paid attention. This Su Ce Fei was most likely being used as a tool. The real mastermind was still hiding in the shadows. While the Crown Prince was recalling the past, Yu Miaoqi had already rushed in front of Yu Xiang. While supporting the woman, she advised, "Everyone calm down and talk properly. Madam, why don't you come with me to the inner room to tidy up and then sit down to talk? If my prefecture Yu has wronged you in any way, I am willing to apologize to you. Let's turn big matters into small ones and resolve them in private." The woman refused to listen to her advice and spat out fiercely. Yu Miaoqi dodged to the side. Her anxious expression carried a bit of pity. In addition, her appearance was elegant and refined. Her voice was gentle and gentle. Compared to Yu Xiang's fiendish appearance, she appeared extremely compassionate. The onlookers were prejudiced by first impressions and sympathized with the woman. They hated Yu Xiang and felt pity for Yu Miaoqi. They pitied her for having such a worrisome younger sister. Before Yu Miaoqi could feel proud, she was pushed aside by Yu Xiang. She almost fell backwards. Scram to the side. She bullied me, which is the same as bullying my prefecture Yu. If I reconcile with her in private, wouldn't the dirty water she splashed on my prefecture Yu's door never be washed away? Also, if she wants revenge and kills herself, others will think that my prefecture Yu killed her to silence her. Brother will be the one to bear the blame. If you want to talk, then talk here. Chapter 88. Yu Xiang pointed out Yu Miaoqi's selfishness with a few words. Some of the sharp-eyed onlookers looked at Yu Miaoqi in a different light. Yu Miaoqi stood still in a sorry state and hurriedly glanced at the Crown Prince. When she saw his dark eyes sweeping over, her heart trembled. Yu Xiang was not in the mood to pay attention to her. She ordered people to bring the crazy woman closer and pressed the horsewhip against her chin. She coldly asked, "Who are you? What deep hatred does my family Yu have with you?" The woman pouted and wanted to spit at her, but she was ruthlessly whipped several times. Her cheeks were immediately covered in bloody whip marks. The upper-class ladies around them recognized her, but they did not dare to make a sound. They were afraid that Yu Xiang would remember them. "Who are you? Speak quickly. If you don't speak, I'll have someone pull out your tongue." Yu Xiang's expression was extremely ferocious. Several old women fiercely pulled at the woman's arms, causing her to scream repeatedly. I'll speak. I'm Su Mao's wife, Madame Zhou." In the end, the woman was a pampered and spoiled noble girl. She could not bear to suffer. Once the impulse passed and she was captivated by Yu Xiang's ruthlessness, she obediently confessed in a short while. The onlookers, especially the young ladies who had not seen the world, all revealed shocked expressions. They were originally a bit wary of Yu Xiang, but now it all turned into fear. The upper-class ladies secretly sighed. As expected of Commandant Yu's younger sister. Her character and methods cannot escape the word ruthless. Madame Zhou is probably finished in her hands. When Madame Zhou was making a ruckus, several people slowly came down from upstairs. The shopkeeper of Purple Direction Pavilion respectfully waited on them, sweating profusely. The person in the lead was a majestic man in deep black clothes. His resolute face faintly revealed a disdainful expression, and two extraordinarily handsome young men followed behind him. One of them held a jade fan in his hand, and he had an elegant bearing. The other held a spring-embroidered saber in his hand, and his eyes were filled with a bloody baleful aura. When the Crown Prince saw them, he hurriedly bowed and told them the whole story. On the other side, Yu Xiang revealed an expression of sudden realization and sneered, "So it's you. You have the nerve to say that my brother killed the innocent and harmed the loyal? How can your husband, Su Mao, be considered loyal. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she was recalling something. After a short while, she began to recount in detail. In the 9th year of Qingkong, Su Mao was taking a walk in the countryside. He was aroused by lust and raped a peasant girl. In order to cover up this matter, he exterminated her entire family of 7. In the 11th year Qingkong was promoted to the position of Xian Wei Shi. He embezzled several 100,000 taels of soldiers' pay and provisions, resulting in the Yangtze River's 6 paths soldiers having no money to spend the winter in silver and cotton clothes. More than 10,000 people died from the cold. In the 17th year, Qingkong was promoted to wing leader of the Jianrui battalion. He secretly released the prisoners on death row from the imperial prison and led them into the jungle to hunt them down like animals. Qingkong was promoted to the commander of the 9 gates in 21 years. He received more than $1 million in bribes and assassinated dozens of people in order to eliminate dissidents. His misdeeds were too numerous to be recorded. You have the nerve to use the word loyal to describe a beast like him. Yu Xiang waved her hand at Lulu, buy a basket of eggs and bring it over. Under everyone's baffled expressions, she continued, the emperor killed him because he was guilty and deserved it. Older brother personally killed him to get rid of an evil for the people. If you feel that you have been wronged, you can go beat the drum and report to the emperor. Why do you have to make things difficult for a cripple like me? My older brother indeed kills people like flies, but he has never killed an innocent person, nor has he ever framed a loyal person. He spilled his blood on the battlefield for his country, and he was loyal to the emperor until his death. I, Yu Xiang, am here to say that if anyone thinks that my brother is guilty of a wrongful case, you can take an egg and smash it on my head, smash it as hard as you can. I will sit here and wait for you all. Her every word was as heavy as 1,000 caddies. She didn't seem to be short of breath or weak at all. When everyone present was swept by her cold gaze, they all lowered their heads and kept silent, their eyes filled with fear. Only then did the matriarch squeeze out of the crowd with difficulty and coldly say, Xiang'er is right. If anyone feels that they have been wronged, then my family you will bear with it. Someone, come and take a seat. Mama Ma quickly brought over a chair for the matriarch to sit down. Lulu also quickly bought a basket of eggs and placed it in front of everyone. Inside and outside the store, it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Not only Madame Zhou, but even the passers-by who were watching the show had turned pale. Yu Xiang had already spoken to this point, so who would dare to smash it? Yu Pinyin had been ordered to kill people. If the emperor said that this person was guilty, who would dare to say no? Even if they hated Yu Pinyin to the bone, who would dare to stand up and smash an egg today? Smashing it meant that they had a grudge against the emperor and were dissatisfied with the court. When they returned, there would be plenty of people to deal with them. Although Yu Xiang's leg was broken, his breadth of mind was not inferior to a man's. His mouth was even more eloquent than 1,000 soldiers and 10,000 horses. If it was an ordinary woman who had encountered this matter, she would have already been smashed to the point of crying and wailing. 11 out of 10 women would have done what Yu Miaoqi did and brought her to the inner chamber to deal with her in private. Thus, the dirty water that was splashed on the family Yu's lintel could not be washed away in this lifetime. Although Yu Xiang's way of handling things was crude, it was extremely effective. His arrogant words praised Yu Pinyin to the extreme, causing people to admire him endlessly. Madame Zhou was scared and timid. She willingly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. The people who were familiar with her also came forward to comfort the matriarch. Yu Xiang's sharp gaze swept over them. The noble ladies all covered their faces and staggered. Yu Xiang's lips hooked into a sneer. He cast a sidelong glance at Yu Miaoqi, whose facial features were slightly distorted, and slowly said, "The person has already come knocking on our door, yet you still weakly went forward to support her and even threatened to apologize. What kind of apology are you talking about? Are you sure that your brother killed the innocent and harmed the loyal? Since your surname is Yu, you better remember this, no matter when and where, protecting the dignity of Prefecture Yu is your most important duty. The reputation of the family Yu can be ruined, but the backbone cannot be bent. Because there were many people watching, although Yu Xiang was full of anger, he did not go overboard. He did not expose Yu Miaoqi's despicable intentions of using her kindness as a foil. However, if she did not say anything, how could people with discerning eyes not know? Especially Emperor Qing Kong and the Crown Prince, who grew up immersed in conspiracies and intrigues. They naturally had a good impression of Yu Xiang, who was straightforward and honest, and hated Yu Miaoqi, who was treacherous and deceitful. In addition, Emperor Qing Kong did not have the intention of letting go of the bow after the birds were all killed. After he passed away, Yu Pinyin would continue to guard the border for the Crown Prince. Seeing that the generals who had followed him on expeditions were all old and the military strength of the great Han dynasty was declining day by day, how could Emperor Qing Kong bear to wear down Yu Pinyin's treasured blade? The bloody killings in recent years were just to sharpen him. The people who said that Yu Pinyin had the ambition of covering the sky with one hand did not grasp Emperor Qing Kang's pulse at all. Instead, they were secretly remembered by him. Seeing that his beloved was being protected like this, he was naturally moved. His dignified face immediately revealed a gentle smile. Yu Pinyin's face did not show it, but his thumb was placed on the hilt and forcefully rubbed it, barely suppressing the surging emotions in his heart. That was his younger sister, his sweetheart. No matter how others criticized her, she would always treat him wholeheartedly. He did not know how to repay this true love. He only felt that no matter how much he spoiled her, no matter how much he loved her, he felt that it was not enough. Standing behind Emperor Qing Kong, Shen Yuanqi hung his head and smiled bitterly. The sour feeling in his heart was simply indescribable. His younger sister, who was once pampered and spoiled, spread rumors everywhere to ruin his career, while his younger sister, who was related by blood, did not even know of his existence. Of the two, one was treacherous, cruel, and unscrupulous, while the other was pure and natural, loyal and righteous. Could it be that the family Shen did not raise Yu Miaoqi to be the way he was today? Thinking of this, his heart felt even more uncomfortable. Emperor Qing Kong clapped his hands and applauded Yu Xiang as soon as he finished speaking. His deep laughter attracted everyone's attention. At the same time, many dragon-scale guards suddenly appeared inside and outside the shop, guarding the purple direction pavilion tightly. Emperor! The old lady jumped up in shock and was about to salute with her walking stick. This place is inconvenient, old madam does not need to be so courteous. Emperor Qing Kong waved his sleeves and waved his hand. Most of the people who could afford to patronize the Purple Direction Pavilion were the most influential families in the capital. Although most of them were women, there were still quite a few people who recognized Emperor Qing Kongdi. They were about to follow suit and bow, but upon hearing these words, they immediately stopped and stood in place, not knowing what to do. The ladies were even more confused and at a loss for what to do. On the contrary, Yu Xiang casually used her sleeve to wipe off the egg on her chin and the eggshell on her skirt. She gracefully cupped her hands and bowed. Yu Xiang greets Master Huang. Master Huang, are you also here to buy a mercury mirror? Emperor Qing Kong smiled brightly and strode forward. He disdainfully flicked off the remaining eggshell on her head and said warmly, "That's right. I ordered 2 for little Jiu, and my first wife. Does Xiang like them? If you like them, Master will also buy 1 for you. Young Master Huang has already bought 1 for me." "Many thanks, Master Huang." Yu Xiang giggled and cupped her hands, her attitude intimate and natural. Emperor Qing Kong laughed brightly again and pointed at taffeta, lace, and other things, asking if she wanted them. If she wanted them, she could take them all. Yu Xiang quickly said, "I don't dare to refuse an elder's gift." She accepted them without any trace of politeness, causing the crown prince to laugh again and again. When the other noble ladies saw this scene, they all had a whole new level of respect for Wuxia. Not only was she graceful and magnanimous, but her affection for the emperor, the crown prince, and the others was enough to establish her in the capital. Although her leg was broken, her back was straighter than anyone else's. When it came to talent and bearing, which noble lady in the capital could compare to her? Yu Miaoqi retreated to the side of the Lin clan and discreetly sized up the crown prince. She saw that the crown prince's eyes no longer held any appreciation for her. Instead, there was a trace of disgust in his eyes. Her previously excited heart slowly sank. She grabbed the Lin clan's arm and hid behind the matriarch. Emperor Chen Kong exchanged a few pleasantries with the matriarch before looking at Madame Zhou, whose mouth was covered by the dragon scale guard and pressed to the ground. He sighed and said, "Ling Qi and Su Mao's edict was issued by Zhen. If you are so hostile to the person who handled the case, don't you hate Zhen to the bone? If you had the chance, wouldn't you even dare to assassinate Zhen? It seems that my decision to forgive the remnants of your Su family was wrong. If I had known earlier, I would have sentenced your entire family to be executed." When Madame Zhou heard this, she struggled madly, her eyes full of pleading. Emperor Chen Kong sneered and ordered the dragon scale guard to take her away. The other noble ladies all held their breaths and didn't dare to raise their heads. They secretly rejoiced that Wuxia's words had stopped them. If Wuxia took people away to settle this privately, they would certainly gloat and make sarcastic remarks. However, the emperor and the crown prince were in the shop, and there were many dragon scale guard hidden everywhere. If they were careless and said a few rebellious words, they would all be finished. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.